Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when the Khmer Empire stretched across Southeast Asia, thriving in ways that still mystify historians. The Khmer Empire, at its peak, was a powerhouse of culture, military might, and agriculture. But perhaps one of its most enduring and surprising elements was the humble grain that fed millions: rice. Imagine vast fields stretching endlessly under the hot sun, workers toiling away in carefully designed plots of land, all with one aim: producing rice. A crop that wasn't just food, but the very lifeblood of the empire. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, feel free to share where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It's always fun to know how far and wide these stories travel. So, now that we're settled, let's ease into tonight's journey. Picture yourself in the rice paddies of ancient Cambodia. You can almost hear the sounds of water gently splashing as workers wade through fields, their movements synchronized with the rhythm of the land. The air smells of damp earth, and the ever-present hum of insects fills the background. It's hot, but the cool breeze from the nearby rivers offers some relief. The fields stretch as far as the eye can see, and at the heart of it all lies a complex, carefully constructed system to measure and manage the rice harvest. A crucial task for an empire where rice wasn't just food, it was everything. Historians still argue whether the Khmer were the first in Southeast Asia to develop such intricate methods of agricultural management. But what is clear is that their system was sophisticated beyond its time. Rice, in the Khmer Empire, was so much more than a crop. It was central to the economy, politics, and even religion. The ability to measure rice with such precision was a sign of both wealth and control. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Khmer Empire's rice farming was no ordinary practice. Rather, it was an intricate web of labor, strategy, and meticulous management. In a time long before calculators, computers, or even the wheelbarrow, the Khmer devised a sophisticated system to measure and manage their rice harvest. Rice wasn't just an agricultural commodity, it was the backbone of the empire, an essential ingredient that helped fuel the economy, society, and even politics. So, how exactly did they measure such an important crop? The tools they used were surprisingly simple by today's standards, but they were remarkably effective. The Khmers used basic but ingenious instruments like measuring rods, weights, and tally sticks to monitor their rice yields with precision. In some cases, measuring rods marked with notches in bamboo were used to gauge the amount of harvested rice from a field. Workers would walk through the paddies, and the amount of rice they collected would be measured by the length of the rod, giving a fairly accurate representation of the harvest. Can you imagine that? Walking through fields, each rod a tool of precision, while the hum of the water and the heat of the sun made it all feel like something out of another time. Historians still argue over whether the Khmer system was more of a centralized or decentralized effort. Some suggest that the kingdom's officials kept tight reins on all rice production, dictating the tools and methods used across the empire. Others believe that each village or district had its own way of handling rice production, with local farmers using slightly different tools or systems of measurement. Regardless of how precisely this system was managed, one thing is clear: rice measurements were central to keeping the empire thriving. There were far-reaching consequences if the measurements weren't right, whether too much rice meant inflation or too little rice led to famine. The Khmers relied on careful, communal knowledge of land and cycles. Fields were divided into sections based on the specific needs of the rice crop, with some fields being dedicated to highland rice and others to the lowland varieties. Workers, who were sometimes organized into teams or units, were assigned tasks in each section. These fields were measured and tracked with such precision that it said no grain went unaccounted for. Rice wasn't just a crop in the Khmer Empire, it was a currency, a tribute to the gods, and a symbol of power. So, when it came time to measure the harvest, the stakes were high. Too much rice in the granaries might lead to inflation, diminishing its value. Too little rice might leave people hungry, threatening the stability of the empire. Everything had to be balanced, and every step in the process was carefully calibrated. The grain, after being harvested, was weighed and recorded meticulously. Large granaries, often located near temples or royal palaces, would store the rice. These granaries were architectural feats themselves, designed not only to store vast quantities of rice, but also to protect it from the elements and pests. Everything from the temperature to the moisture levels was considered to ensure the grain stayed fresh and viable for the coming seasons. The Khmer system extended far beyond just planting, growing, and harvesting. Their agricultural wisdom allowed them to keep the soil fertile year after year. The Khmers practiced crop rotation, planting different types of rice or other crops to maintain soil health. Additionally, they had sophisticated irrigation techniques, including canal systems that brought water from the rivers to the fields. These irrigation systems were especially important in the dry season, ensuring that the crops would thrive despite the unpredictable weather. In fact, rice farming in the Khmer Empire was so well organized that it became a kind of unifying force within the empire. It wasn't just about feeding the population. Rice was symbolic of order, prosperity, and control. The management of rice affected everything from trade to taxation to military strength. In times of plenty, the empire could trade rice with neighboring kingdoms and make tribute payments to other rulers. In times of scarcity, rice would be carefully rationed to ensure that no one went hungry. If we imagine ourselves back in that time, standing in a rice field surrounded by workers, the air thick with the scent of wet earth, we begin to appreciate just how much went into each grain of rice that was harvested. It wasn't simply a crop, it was the result of hard work, attention to detail, and, in many cases, divine blessing. As much as rice fueled the empire, it also symbolized the relationship between the land, the people, and the gods they worshipped. Farmers were seen as vital to the kingdom's survival, and their role in ensuring the rice harvest was successful was considered not just a job, but a sacred duty. We often think of ancient civilizations in terms of monuments and wars, but the Khmer Empire's mastery over agriculture, especially rice, shows us how deeply intertwined the land and its people were. It was their agricultural prowess that allowed the empire to flourish for centuries. And even now, as researchers uncover more about the daily life of the Khmers, we find ourselves amazed at the precision with which they managed the simplest things, like rice. From the tools used to measure it to the rituals surrounding its planting and harvest, rice was both a practical resource and a cultural touchstone. So next time you sit down to a meal of rice, whether it's fried rice or just plain steamed, you can think back to the Khmer Empire and all the painstaking work that went into making that grain a symbol of life, sustenance, and prosperity. The tools they used may have been basic, but their understanding of how to manage their resources was far from simple. As we continue to explore the Khmer Empire's deep connection with rice, let's turn our attention to the spectacular design of the rice fields themselves. These weren't just any fields, they were carefully constructed landscapes that blended the natural world with human ingenuity. The Khmer people's rice paddies were engineered with incredible precision to ensure that they could thrive, even under the harshest of conditions. These fields were, in many ways, a reflection of the empire itself, carefully arranged, meticulously managed, and designed to last. The most important feature of these rice fields was their irrigation system. The Khmer Empire didn't rely on the capricious whims of rain. Instead, they built elaborate canal networks that connected their rice paddies to nearby rivers and water sources. These canals ensured that the rice fields were constantly supplied with water, allowing them to remain productive year-round. In a region where the seasons could be unpredictable, this infrastructure was vital to the empire's stability. Historians still argue whether the Khmer mastered irrigation techniques on their own or if they were influenced by neighboring cultures, like the Indians or the Thais. Regardless of the source, it's undeniable that the Khmer engineers made these systems their own. Their canals and reservoirs were not just functional, They were part of a grand design. Some of the largest irrigation systems, like the ones around Angkor, could stretch for miles, allowing water to flow evenly across vast areas of farmland. Now, imagine standing by one of these canals. The water is crystal clear, flowing gently along its path, bringing life to the lush green rice fields that stretch before you. As the sun begins to set, the light dances on the surface of the water, creating a peaceful, almost surreal scene. The laborers, who have spent the day tending to the rice, are slowly making their way home, their silhouettes outlined against the warm golden sky. The smell of wet earth lingers in the air, a reminder of the hard work that has gone into maintaining this delicate ecosystem. These canals weren't just a method of irrigation, they were also used to regulate the flow of water, ensuring that the rice fields didn't become flooded or to dry. Flooding, in particular, was a constant concern, as too much water could damage the crops and wash away the delicate soil. The Khmer farmers had developed a system of sluice gates and spillways to control the flow of water and prevent any damage. This careful management of water was a testament to the empire's understanding of the environment and its ability to work in harmony with nature. But the fields themselves were just the beginning. The Khmer also built intricate systems of terraces and embankments to protect their crops from erosion and to create more space for planting. These terraces were constructed on the slopes of hills, allowing the rice to grow in neat rows, which helped conserve water and minimize the risk of soil loss. This wasn't just about farming, it was about creating an entire ecosystem that could support the empire's needs for generations to come. Of course, this system wasn't without its challenges. Maintaining these vast networks of canals, reservoirs, and rice fields required a great deal of labor and constant attention. There were always concerns about pests, weather, and the overall health of the soil. The Khmer people had to be vigilant, constantly monitoring their fields and making adjustments as needed. The success of the rice harvest depended on the collective effort of the farmers, engineers, and even the royal court, which often provided oversight and resources. As you stand there, looking out at the immensity of the system, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at the scale of the Khmer Empire's rice farming. It was a system that required knowledge, patience, and an intimate understanding of the land. The Khmer had created something truly remarkable, a self-sustaining network that could feed not just the empire, but the entire region. Looking at the layout of the fields, it's clear that the Khmer didn't just want to grow rice, they wanted to master the process. This wasn't farming for survival, this was farming for prosperity. The rice fields were symbols of the empire's strength, a testament to its ability to harness the land and its resources. The designs of these fields weren't just functional. They were works of art, carefully crafted to serve both practical and spiritual purposes. Every aspect of the rice field's design, from the canals to the terraces, was created with a purpose, to ensure that the Khmer Empire could feed its people and maintain its power. In the end, rice was much more than a simple crop. It was a cornerstone of the Khmer Empire's identity, a resource that shaped every aspect of life. Whether it was being harvested for consumption, used in trade, or stored for future use, rice was always at the center of the Khmer world. The precision with which the Khmer measured and managed their rice fields was a reflection of their broader approach to life, a deep respect for the land and a commitment to creating something lasting. So, as we continue this journey through the Khmer Empire, think back to those fields, their carefully laid canals, the precise measurements, and the tireless effort of the farmers. It's easy to forget that something as simple as rice was the key to an empire's success, but in the case of the Khmer, it was everything. By now, we've established just how critical rice was to the Khmer Empire, both as a symbol of power and as the very foundation of its economy. But rice wasn't just a commodity, it was part of something much larger. It was a key player in the complex social hierarchy that defined the Khmer world. In a society where everything was interconnected, religion, politics, and even agriculture, rice played a role that extended far beyond the kitchen table. The empire's leaders understood this connection deeply. Kings and nobles often took the role of overseeing the rice harvest, ensuring that they were abundant and that they were properly distributed across the empire. In fact, the king's power was, in some ways, measured by his ability to manage the empire's rice production. The greater the harvest, the greater the wealth, and thus the greater the power of the king. But it wasn't just about quantity, it was about quality and control. Historians still argue whether the king had direct involvement in each village's harvest or whether he relied on a network of administrators to manage the process on his behalf. Some believe that the royal court oversaw the entire system, from land distribution to taxation, while others argue that local leaders held more influence, making decisions based on their own interpretations of royal decrees. Regardless of the level of control the king had over each field, it's clear that rice was at the heart of the Khmer political system. The harvest was the king's opportunity to display his ability to manage the kingdom effectively, ensuring that rice was available in every corner of the empire. As you imagine the royal court's involvement in the rice harvest, you can picture the grand ceremonies that would take place around harvest time. The king would receive reports from his administrators, who would provide details on how much rice had been harvested from each region. These reports were not just numbers, they were symbolic of the king's power to manage the empire. The king would then distribute the rice according to the needs of his people, sometimes as tribute to other kingdoms, sometimes to feed his military, and sometimes as a gift to temples and religious leaders. The connection between the royal court and rice wasn't limited to logistics, it was deeply spiritual as well. In the Khmer Empire, rice had a sacred significance, often tied to the gods and the natural cycles of the world. The rice harvest was not just a physical act. It was a ritual, a moment where the human and divine worlds met. Temples were built to honor the gods, and rice was often used in offerings to ensure a good harvest for the coming year. The harvest was a time of great celebration, but also of reverence and respect. The act of harvesting rice was intertwined with the act of honoring the earth and its spiritual significance. As we think about this connection between religion and rice, imagine the royal ceremonies that would take place at the height of harvest season. The king, dressed in his royal finery, would lead a procession to the temple, where priests would offer rice to the gods in hopes of securing a prosperous next season. The rice, having been carefully measured and stored, would be presented as a symbol of the kingdom's strength and abundance. It wasn't just about providing for the people. It was about maintaining a connection with the gods that ensured the continuity of the empire. It's clear that rice was never just about food for the Khmer. It was an expression of power, a ritual offering to the divine, and a measure of the king's ability to govern. The ability to produce and measure rice was not only a practical concern, it was an indicator of the kingdom's health and strength. A king who could manage his rice harvest well was a king who could claim stability and prosperity for his people. And while the measurement of rice may have seemed like a mundane task, it was, in fact, a deeply political act that helped maintain the social and political order. But rice wasn't just about the elites or the royal court, it was also a significant factor in the lives of ordinary Khmer citizens. The lower classes, who worked the fields and harvested the rice, were the lifeblood of the empire. Without their labor, the rice harvest would have been impossible. The Khmer society was built on the backs of these farmers, who were often subjected to grueling work in the rice paddies. The relationship between the farmers and the ruling class was complex. In some cases, farmers worked the land for the royal court, paying a portion of their harvest as a form of tax. In other cases, land was owned by the nobles, who would collect rice from the farmers in exchange for protection or other services. The farmers had little control over the amount they were taxed or the conditions under which they worked, but their labor was absolutely essential to the success of the empire. The farmers were the ones who kept the rice fields alive, ensuring that the harvest was plentiful enough to feed the empire's growing population. In your mind, picture the farmers, men and women, working under the hot sun, their hands moving quickly as they carefully measured out the rice they had harvested. They were the ones who ensured that the kingdom's rice stores were full, that the temples were stocked with offerings, and that the royal court had enough to maintain their power. Yet their lives were often marked by hardship and toil, as they had little choice but to work the land and give a portion of their harvest to the rulers. It's easy to see how, despite the importance of rice to the empire, those who worked in the fields didn't always see the rewards of their labor. As you reflect on this dynamic, it becomes clear just how complex the system of rice measurement really was. It wasn't just about growing rice, it was about balancing power, religion, and social roles in a way that ensured the empire's stability. The production and measurement of rice was the key to everything. Without it, the Khmer Empire could not have sustained its grandeur, and the legacy of its agricultural achievements would not have endured. Now that we've explored how rice functioned as the backbone of both the economy and the politics of the Khmer Empire, let's shift focus to the more practical aspects of rice cultivation and harvest. What did the daily life of the average Khmer rice farmer look like? How did they manage to work the land so meticulously, given the empire's reliance on these vast rice paddies? The answer lies in the intricate farming systems they developed, a mixture of ancient techniques, hands-on labor, and cooperation. To understand this process better, picture yourself walking through a rice paddy during the early hours of the day. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, and there's a quiet stillness in the air, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional croak of a frog. The paddies are still covered in a thin layer of mist, and the workers are already in the fields, wading through the shallow water, their feet making small splashes in the mud. These workers, from young to old, were the lifeblood of the rice fields. They carried with them simple tools, scythes, hoes, and baskets that would help them complete the delicate task of planting, tending, and harvesting rice. The labor was grueling. Planting rice required the farmers to carefully place young rice seedlings into the flooded fields, ensuring they were spaced evenly. This wasn't just a simple task of tossing seeds into the water. It required precision. The rice plants needed to be spaced just right to ensure they would grow tall and strong. It's said that every worker in the field could plant hundreds of rice seedlings each day. Each task, whether it was planting, weeding, or harvesting, required a great deal of care and attention, as even the smallest mistake could reduce the crop yield. The Khmer people's understanding of rice cultivation extended beyond just the physical labor. They had developed a sophisticated system of irrigation that allowed them to grow rice in areas that were once thought to dry. The system of canals, reservoirs, and sluice gates ensured that the fields remained flooded during the crucial growing season, but not too flooded, as standing water could destroy the crops. During the harvest, workers would carefully drain the fields, allowing the rice to dry before it was collected. This delicate balance between water and land was the secret to their success. Historians still debate whether the Khmer's irrigation systems were the most advanced in the ancient world, while other ancient civilizations, like the Romans and Chinese, also built extensive irrigation systems. The Khmer Empire's systems were particularly effective in Southeast Asia's tropical climate. The canals, some of which still exist today, allowed for year-round cultivation, which was crucial for an empire that relied so heavily on rice. As the rice neared harvest time, the fields were cleared of any weeds or unwanted plants, ensuring the rice would grow without competition for resources. This required both physical labor and intimate knowledge of the land. The farmers, who had been working in the fields for months, were now on the lookout for the ideal moment to harvest the rice. The timing had to be perfect, harvest too early, and the rice wouldn't be fully grown. Way too long, and the grain could become overripe and lose its nutritional value. The ideal harvest time was a delicate balance of patience and experience. The harvesting process itself was an event that required both skill and speed. Workers would gather in teams, cutting the ripe rice stalks and bundling them together for easy transport. The rice was then carried to the granaries or storage areas, where it was carefully measured and stored for future use. The farmers would often take great pride in the harvest, knowing that their efforts would help sustain not just their own families, but the entire empire. For the Khmer, rice farming was a communal effort. While there were certainly many who worked the fields, there were also those who oversaw the harvest. often royal officials or local administrators who ensured that the rice was measured accurately and that it was distributed properly. The rice harvest wasn't just a task to be completed. It was an event that involved the entire community. Farmers would often celebrate the completion of the harvest with feasts, rituals, and ceremonies that paid homage to the gods for their blessings. Rice was seen as a gift from the earth, and so it was only fitting that the harvest was marked with thanksgiving. As you imagine this scene, you can almost hear the sounds of laughter and song drifting through the fields as the farmers celebrate the end of another season. The rhythmic swish of the sickles as they cut through the rice stalks, the splash of feet in the mud, and the chorus of voices singing together in harmony. The harvest was as much a spiritual event as a physical one. This wasn't just about food. It was about sustaining the cycle of life that connected the Khmer people to the land, the gods, and each other. The rice harvest was a time of year that brought the community together, but it was also a time for reflection. As the workers looked out over the fields, they could take pride in the results of their hard work, knowing that they had contributed to the continued prosperity of the Khmer Empire. The rice they harvested would feed not only their families, but also the entire kingdom, providing sustenance for soldiers, traders, and rulers alike. In the larger context of the empire, rice farming was a vital cog in a much bigger machine. Without it, there would be no armies to defend the empire, no markets to trade in, and no royal courts to uphold the power of the king. The success of the rice harvest directly impacted the empire's stability and prosperity. And so, for the Khmer, rice was more than just a crop. It was the essence of their way of life, a symbol of their enduring connection to the land, and a key to their empire's continued success. Now, as you drift further into this historical journey, imagine yourself surrounded by the sounds of the rice fields, the soft whisper of the wind in the trees, the gentle lapping of water, and the distant voices of the workers singing their songs. You're part of a community that understands the value of the land, the significance of the harvest, and the importance of rice in sustaining life. The rhythm of the seasons flows through you, and for a moment, you feel connected to a world that, though long gone, still lives on in the memories of those who lived it. As we continue to delve deeper into the intricate world of the Khmer Empire's rice farming, let's now explore how the rice harvest was not only a feat of agricultural mastery, but also tied closely to the spiritual and religious practices of the time. The Khmer people believed that their prosperity, especially in terms of rice production, was closely linked to the favor of the gods. In fact, the entire agricultural cycle, from planting to harvest, was filled with rituals and ceremonies designed to ensure a bountiful harvest. The reverence for rice wasn't just about feeding the body. It was also about honoring the divine and maintaining harmony with nature. The most important religious figure in the kingdom, the king, was often seen as the intermediary between the people and the gods. As the steward of the empire's rice production, it was the king's responsibility to ensure that the gods were pleased with the harvest. The king would lead important religious ceremonies at the beginning of the planting season, offering prayers and sacrifices to the gods of the land, particularly those associated with rice and agriculture. These ceremonies were meant to invoke divine protection for the crops and to ensure that the rice fields would remain fertile. Historians still debate the exact nature of these rituals. Some suggest that the king himself participated directly in planting the first rice seed, symbolizing the beginning of the growing season and the king's role as the divine representative of the earth. Others believe that the ceremonies were led by priests, with the king only observing or offering symbolic gifts to the gods. Regardless of the details, it's clear that the connection between rice farming and religious practices was deep and sacred. Rice wasn't just a physical crop, it was a spiritual offering, a way to maintain balance with the forces of nature and the divine. In these early spring ceremonies, imagine the sights and sounds, the vibrant colors of temple banners fluttering in the breeze, the scent of incense filling the air, and the rhythmic chanting of priests as they conducted the rites. The king, draped in royal regalia, stands at the head of the procession, holding a ceremonial sickle as he prepares to plant the first rice seed in a newly prepared field. The crowd of farmers and priests watches in solemn silence, knowing that this act will set the tone for the entire season's harvest. As the growing season progresses, there were other smaller rituals to ensure that the crops remained healthy. It was believed that certain deities, particularly those associated with water and fertility, needed to be regularly appeased to avoid misfortune. The Khmer people understood that their rice fields were not simply a matter of human effort. They were a delicate balance between human action and divine favor. The gods, it was believed, could either bless or curse the fields, ensuring an abundant harvest or condemning the rice to ruin. Farmers, therefore, kept a vigilant eye on the crops, constantly seeking signs from nature that their efforts were pleasing to the gods. The harvest season itself was another moment of great religious significance. Once the rice was gathered, the Khmer held large festivals and celebrations to honor the successful completion of the harvest. These festivals were marked by elaborate feasts, music, dance, and offerings to the gods. The rice that was harvested was not only a practical necessity, it was also an offering, a tribute to the divine for the prosperity of the empire. At these harvest festivals, the king would once again play a central role, overseeing the ceremonies and ensuring that the gods were thanked for their blessings. It was believed that the king's participation in these rituals helped maintain the cosmic order, ensuring that the rice harvest would continue to be plentiful for generations to come. The festivals and ceremonies were not only about giving thanks for the harvest, they were also about ensuring the spiritual well-being of the entire empire. Rice was viewed as a sacred gift from the gods, and it was believed that the prosperity of the kingdom was directly tied to the kingdom's ability to produce an abundant harvest. If the harvest was poor, it was seen as a sign that the gods were displeased, and it could have serious consequences for the kingdom's political and social stability. A failed harvest could lead to famine, unrest, or even the downfall of a ruler who was seen as no longer in favor with the gods. Beyond the king and the priests, the farmers themselves were also part of this religious cycle. While they were the ones who toiled in the fields, they were also seen as guardians of the land. Their role was vital to maintaining the harmony between the people and the divine forces that controlled the rice crops. During the harvest, farmers would often make offerings of rice to the spirits of the land, thanking them for their protection and asking for continued blessings in the future. These offerings were sometimes as simple as a handful of rice placed at the base of a sacred tree or a small shrine, but they carried great significance. Now, imagine being one of these farmers, having worked tirelessly throughout the growing season. As you bring in the harvest, you pause for a moment, taking in the abundance around you. You offer a prayer or a blessing to the spirits of the land, asking for protection and prosperity for the next season. The air is thick with the smells of freshly harvested rice, and the sounds of celebration echo through the fields as you and your fellow workers prepare for the feast that will mark the end of another successful harvest. The relationship between the people, the land, and the gods was a deeply spiritual one. It wasn't just about the rice itself, it was about the sacred connection between all things. The Khmer people understood that the harvest was not just a physical event, it was a spiritual one that required gratitude, respect, and balance. Without the blessing of the gods, the harvest would not be possible. And so, rice was not merely food. It was a symbol of the divine harmony that sustained the entire empire. As you picture this scene, the ceremonies, the harvest, the spiritual offerings, it becomes clear that rice was much more than a crop for the Khmer. It was a link between the human and the divine, an offering that ensured the empire's continued prosperity. The people didn't just farm rice, they honored it, revered it, and understood its role in maintaining the harmony of their world. As we continue to trace the role of rice in the Khmer Empire, it's time to zoom out and consider the bigger picture. The way rice farming was not just an isolated practice, but was intricately linked to the very structure of Khmer society itself. The importance of rice went far beyond the farms and fields. It was woven into the fabric of the empire's economy, its political system, and its social hierarchy. The harvesting, distribution, and consumption of rice were tightly controlled, forming a cornerstone of the entire kingdom's power and prosperity. First, let's take a closer look at the labor that went into rice farming. The Khmer Empire's rice fields were vast, and maintaining them required a significant workforce. This wasn't just about a few farmers working together. This was a large-scale operation. Workers in the rice fields were not only farmers, they were integral to the functioning of the empire itself. In fact, many of these laborers were part of a larger social structure where their labor was a form of payment or tribute to the ruling elite. The Khmer, like many other ancient societies, used a system of forced labor to maintain their agricultural operations. Many of the workers who tended the rice fields were peasants, often required to work the land as part of their obligations to the king or local nobility. This system of labor was built into the social fabric, where the lower classes, including farmers, artisans, and laborers, provided for the upper echelons of society in exchange for protection and other services. Historians still debate the extent to which forced labor was used in rice cultivation versus voluntary labor, especially given the evidence of large-scale public works projects such as the construction of temples and canals. However, what is clear is that rice farming wasn't solely a matter of independent smallholder farming. The state had a vested interest in the harvest, and much of the labor was controlled by the empire. Land was often assigned to workers, who were required to pay part of their harvest as a form of tax. In some cases, rice was collected as tribute and sent to the king or local officials, who would store it in royal granaries or distribute it throughout the empire. Now, picture the grand scale of these operations. Rice wasn't simply a staple food. It was a form of currency and a symbol of wealth. Those who controlled the rice supply held power over the rest of the empire. The royal family, nobles, and priests were the primary beneficiaries of the rice harvest, but the laborers and farmers who worked the land were also a vital part of this system. Even if they didn't reap the same rewards, they worked in tandem with the state, giving a portion of their crop in exchange for security, food, and shelter. This system ensured that the upper classes were supplied with the resources they needed to maintain their status and their control over the empire. The relationship between rice and the empire's political system was so intimate that it extended into the very core of Khmer society. The distribution of rice could be seen as a tool for political control. For example, the king could reward loyal soldiers or officials with rice, or distribute it during times of famine to maintain the loyalty of the people. Rice was a way to demonstrate power, who had it, who controlled it, and who had access to it. It wasn't just about sustenance, it was about authority and social hierarchy. The ability to provide rice to the people was a mark of a good ruler, someone who could secure the kingdom's prosperity. The economic implications of rice were equally profound. Not only did it serve as a crucial food source, but it also functioned as a currency in itself. Trade within the empire, and with neighboring kingdoms, often involved rice. The Khmer would export rice to other regions, using it as a commodity to gain wealth, establish alliances, and ensure political stability. Rice was transported along trade routes, sometimes as far as India and China. The Khmer were able to exchange it for other goods, such as luxury items or resources they could not easily produce themselves. The Khmer Empire's ability to control the production and distribution of rice gave it a significant edge over rival states. By ensuring a stable supply of rice, the empire could support its growing population and army. When rice was plentiful, the economy flourished, and the empire expanded. Conversely, when rice was in short supply, whether due to drought, pests, or poor management, the consequences were dire. A poor rice harvest could lead to widespread famine, a collapse of trade, and a weakening of the state's power. Imagine the ripples through society when a poor harvest struck. With no rice to trade, the kingdom would begin to falter. The peasants, who already lived close to the edge, would suffer the most, as they relied on the rice they grew for both sustenance and trade. The nobility and the king would also feel the impact, as the rice tribute they depended on to maintain their lavish lifestyles would be reduced. With rice as both currency and sustenance, Any disruption to the supply would shake the very foundations of the empire. In times of crisis, the Khmer king would be expected to step in and stabilize the situation. This could involve redistributing rice from royal granaries, increasing food imports from neighboring kingdoms, or organizing large-scale public works projects to provide food in exchange for labor. The king's ability to manage the rice supply during times of famine was a key factor in maintaining his legitimacy as a ruler. In the larger context of the empire's military prowess, rice was also essential. Armies depended on rice to feed soldiers as they marched through the kingdom or engaged in battles. The ability to sustain a large military force was a critical component of the empire's success, and rice was at the center of this. It's easy to overlook the role of food in military strategy, but for the Khmer, rice was as crucial as any weapon in their arsenal. In these moments, we see how rice was more than just a crop for the Khmer. It was a symbol of life itself. It represented wealth, power, stability, and survival. The empire's prosperity was tied to its ability to grow, measure, and manage rice, and when rice was in abundance, the empire thrived. Now, as you reflect on this intricate system, it's remarkable to think of the delicate balance the Khmer maintained in managing their rice harvests, from the fields to the royal granaries, from the farmers to the king. Everyone played a role in ensuring that the Khmer Empire could survive, prosper, and expand. Rice was their lifeblood, their currency, their culture, and their legacy. As we continue this journey through the rice-soaked world of the Khmer Empire, let's now shift our gaze to something perhaps a bit more unexpected: the fascinating role of rice in the Khmer military and trade networks. While most people think of rice as merely a food staple, for the Khmer, it was much more than that. It wasn't only the grain that fueled the people. Rice also helped fuel the empire's expansion and military power. Rice wasn't just part of the domestic economy, it was key to maintaining a functioning military, supporting trade routes, and keeping the empire's power intact. Imagine yourself in the heart of the empire's military planning. The king and his generals gathered around a massive table, discussing the logistics of a military campaign. While they may have talked about the army's numbers, weapons, and strategy, one thing they were also undoubtedly focused on was food. Without enough rice to feed the soldiers, their military force would be nothing more than a parade of starving men. Rice, therefore, was an essential resource in the Khmer military. Without it, the very idea of conquest and territorial expansion would collapse. The Khmer army, like most ancient forces, was heavily reliant on its supply lines to keep soldiers well-fed during campaigns. Rice served as a core part of the military's provisions. During long campaigns, soldiers would carry dried rice in bags, ensuring they had enough food to sustain them on the march. When they set up camp for a battle, rice would be prepared in large quantities to feed the troops. Rice wasn't just the food they consumed, it was a key part of maintaining morale and readiness for battle. Soldiers knew that if rice ran short, so would their strength and resolve. Rice wasn't just a staple, it was an empire's weapon of endurance. And it wasn't just the soldiers who relied on rice. The empire's ability to store and manage rice also played a significant role in maintaining the Khmer military's advantage. During times of peace, royal granaries would be stocked with rice in preparation for future military campaigns. These stores would ensure that the army could be sustained even when trade routes were disrupted or food supplies from the land were scarce. The granaries were not just symbolic of wealth and stability, they were practical reserves, safeguarding the kingdom's strength. In times of war or drought, the rice stored in these granaries would help keep the empire's military viable. Historians still debate the extent to which rice reserves were centralized in the Khmer Empire. Some scholars argue that the royal court controlled all rice reserves, carefully monitoring the distribution of rice during times of need. Others suggest that local authorities had more autonomy, managing their own rice supplies and distributing it as needed. Regardless of the level of centralization, what is clear is that the management of rice was directly tied to military readiness and political stability. The king's ability to stockpile and distribute rice during times of need could mean the difference between victory and defeat, prosperity and famine. Rice also played a key role in the empire's trade network. The Khmer Empire's central position in Southeast Asia meant that it had access to a vast network of trade routes, both over land and by sea. Rice was one of the most important commodities exchanged along these routes. The Khmer traded rice not just for goods like luxury items and raw materials, but also for alliances and influence. Rice was more than just food. It was a powerful economic tool. Imagine the bustling trade ports along the rivers, where rice was loaded onto ships and sent to far-flung parts of Southeast Asia. Merchants bartered and traded, exchanging bags of rice for exotic goods from distant lands. Rice wasn't just a local commodity. It was a sought-after good, valued for its quality and abundance. The Khmer's expertise in rice production became well known throughout the region, and their rice was considered some of the best in Southeast Asia. As a result, rice became an integral part of the empire's foreign diplomacy. The Khmer would send rice as gifts to neighboring kingdoms, using it as a form of tribute or as a way to seal alliances. In this context, rice wasn't just about feeding the population, it was also about maintaining relationships with other kingdoms and ensuring the Khmer Empire's continued dominance in the region. Rice was a currency in its own right, one that helped secure both economic and political power. The empire's ability to produce and export rice gave it leverage in diplomatic negotiations. This connection between rice and diplomacy wasn't limited to trade. When the Khmer were involved in conflicts or territorial disputes, rice could be used as a form of negotiation. In some instances, rice was offered as a form of tribute to other kingdoms, securing peace or gaining favor with foreign rulers. Rice, in these contexts, was both a tool of trade and a tool of war. Its role in diplomacy cannot be underestimated. Without a reliable rice supply, the Khmer might not have been able to maintain their political influence in the region. The importance of rice in the Khmer military and trade networks extended well beyond the immediate borders of the empire. During times of peace, rice ensured the prosperity of the kingdom and its people, but in times of war, it became the sustenance that powered the Khmer's ability to expand their empire. And when the empire engaged in trade, rice was the commodity that tied the Khmer to their neighbors, ensuring their place in the greater Southeast Asian economic system. As we picture this vibrant network of rice, trade, and military power, we can't help but marvel at the strategic role this humble grain played in the success of the Khmer Empire. Rice was far more than a simple crop. It was a central component of the kingdom's political and military machine. Without rice, the Khmer Empire might not have been the thriving, expansive civilization it was. It's amazing to think that something as simple as rice was so deeply tied to the success of one of the greatest empires in Southeast Asia. And now, as we continue, let's pause to reflect on how deeply intertwined rice was in the empire's complex web of power. Its economic, military, and diplomatic significance is a testament to just how vital this crop was to the prosperity and survival of the Khmer people. As we continue our exploration of the Khmer Empire's rice-driven economy, let's delve into how rice farming and trade also intersected with the empire's architectural marvels, particularly in the development of cities and temples. The connection between rice and architecture might seem distant at first, but when you consider the incredible feats of engineering achieved by the Khmer, it becomes clear that rice farming influenced the very layout and design of some of the greatest structures the empire ever produced. One of the most well-known architectural wonders of the Khmer Empire, Angkor Wat, a sprawling temple complex that remains an iconic symbol of Khmer ingenuity. But did you know that rice played a role in the construction of such monumental structures? The vast labor force needed to build Angkor Wat and the surrounding temples had to be sustained, and rice was the key. Workers, artisans, and soldiers who labored on these colossal projects relied on the steady supply of rice to keep them energized and working efficiently. The king, understanding that maintaining a steady workforce was critical to the success of his ambitious building projects, ensured that enough rice was available to feed the people who built his empire's legacy. Historians still debate whether rice was stored specifically for the construction of Angkor Wat and similar temples, or if it was part of the broader agricultural system managed by the royal court. Some argue that the surplus rice harvested during periods of abundance was specifically set aside for large-scale public works projects. Others suggest that the rice harvested was simply part of the regular distribution system and was used to feed both the military and the construction workers. Regardless of the specifics, rice remained the vital link between the agricultural labor force and the grand architecture of the empire. Imagine walking through the dense jungle surrounding Angkor Wat, the hum of insects in the air, and the sound of your own footsteps on the dirt path. You can almost feel the heat of the sun beating down on you, yet there is a sense of awe as you approach the temple. As you walk closer, you notice the intricacy of the stone carvings, the massive stone blocks that have been moved and placed with remarkable precision. It's hard to imagine how so much labor and effort went into building such a massive structure, but now consider the workers who laid the foundation for these masterpieces: farmers, laborers, and artisans who, like their ancestors, were fueled by the steady supply of rice. Rice also played a role in the way that Khmer designed their cities. Angkor, the heart of the empire, was not just a place of religious significance. It was a thriving urban center, carefully planned and constructed to accommodate a vast population. The city was designed around water, with canals, reservoirs, and intricate irrigation systems that helped ensure the rice fields surrounding the city remained fertile. These water systems, vital for rice cultivation, were mirrored in the layout of the city itself. Angkor's urban planning wasn't just about streets and buildings. It was about ensuring that rice farming could continue to support the city's population. The canals and reservoirs that ran through Angkor allowed for the transport of rice, the management of water, and the maintenance of the fields that fed the city. In fact, the water management systems in Angkor were so sophisticated that they were considered a marvel of engineering in their own right. The Khmer were able to build massive reservoirs, such as the West Barre, which spanned over 3 kilometers in length and was used to store water for irrigation. These reservoirs allowed for year-round rice production, even during dry periods. This level of water control wasn't just about farming, it was about making sure that the city itself could thrive. The rice produced around Angkor fed the people who built it and lived within it, and the canals and reservoirs ensured that this rice was never in short supply. But rice wasn't just a tool for the survival of the people. It was also a source of divine symbolism in Khmer architecture. Temples like Angkor Wat were not just places of worship. They were physical representations of the cosmos. The layout of these temples often mirrored the structure of the universe, with central spires representing Mount Meru, the sacred mountain at the center of the world in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. Surrounding the temples were elaborate water features, such as reflecting pools and canals, symbolizing the oceans that encircle the mythical Mount Meru. Rice, the crop that sustained the empire, was woven into this symbolism. The abundance of rice was seen as a gift from the gods, ensuring that the kingdom could flourish both materially and spiritually. In your mind's eye, imagine a vast temple complex with perfectly manicured gardens and shimmering pools of water reflecting the towering stone spires. The sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves fill the air, but you can't ignore the centrality of water in the temple's design. The very element that nourished the rice fields was also central to the design of the temples, creating a tangible connection between the physical and the divine. Rice wasn't just something you ate, it was something sacred, deeply entwined with the spiritual and cultural fabric of the empire. This connection between rice, architecture, and spirituality was evident in every corner of the empire. The great temples, palaces, and reservoirs were all manifestations of the Khmer people's reverence for the rice that fed them. The land, the water, the temples, all were interconnected in a cycle of agricultural, architectural, and spiritual harmony. As we reflect on this, we begin to see just how profoundly rice shaped not only the physical structures of the Khmer Empire, but also the very worldview of the people who built it. Rice was never just about feeding the people, it was about sustaining the entire empire, both materially and spiritually, and the temples and cities that rose from the earth were, in many ways, a direct reflection of this sacred relationship with the land. As we delve deeper into the role of rice in the Khmer Empire, we now find ourselves at the crossroads of an ancient empire's decline and the crucial role rice continued to play in its downfall. The Khmer Empire, once thriving through the production, management, and distribution of rice, eventually began to experience difficulties that would challenge its very existence. These issues weren't solely political or military. They were deeply tied to the agricultural systems that had supported the empire for centuries. The empire's decline began gradually, but one of the most significant contributors to the weakening of the Khmer Empire was environmental change. The delicate balance that had been maintained for centuries between rice cultivation, irrigation systems, and the land itself began to unravel. Historians and environmental scientists have long debated the causes of this collapse, with many pointing to the impact of environmental factors such as droughts, deforestation, and the eventual failure of the complex irrigation systems that had once supported the rice fields. At the height of the empire's power, the Khmer had developed one of the most sophisticated water management systems in the world. The canals and reservoirs that supported rice cultivation were designed to ensure water was distributed evenly across the vast rice paddies, even in dry seasons. The reservoirs, such as the West Barre, allowed for year-round rice production, which was vital to sustaining the empire's large population and its military. These water systems were considered a marvel of engineering, and their continued upkeep was seen as a symbol of the Khmer Empire's ability to manage and control its resources. However, as the empire aged, the very infrastructure that had once been the lifeblood of rice farming began to degrade. The maintenance of the irrigation system was costly, requiring a constant workforce to clear canals, repair reservoirs, and ensure that water continued to flow properly. Over time, this system became increasingly difficult to manage. With the rise of internal conflict, the shift of political power, and the increasing demands of a growing population, maintaining the complex network of canals and reservoirs became a less viable option. Historians still debate the exact reasons for the breakdown of the irrigation systems. Some suggest that the population growth itself was a contributing factor. With more people to feed, the demand for rice increased, putting more pressure on the land and water systems. The canals that once ensured water for the rice fields became overwhelmed, leading to erosion, silting, and a loss of water storage capacity. Without the constant replenishment of water, the rice paddies began to suffer, and crop yields began to fall. Others point to deforestation as a major contributor to the empire's agricultural decline. The Khmer had cleared vast amounts of land to build their cities and expand their rice fields. This deforestation not only reduced the land available for agriculture, but also disrupted the natural water cycle. Without the trees to help retain moisture and regulate rainfall, the climate became more erratic, and the rice fields were more vulnerable to droughts. As the rice harvests began to dwindle, the impact was felt across the empire. A failing rice crop meant that the people no longer had enough food to sustain the population. Famine and hunger began to spread throughout the kingdom, affecting both the lower classes who worked the fields and the elites who relied on rice as both sustenance and currency. With less rice to feed the military and the population, the empire's ability to defend itself against external threats diminished. At the same time, the environmental degradation also affected the Khmer's ability to maintain their architectural marvels. The grand temples, palaces, and reservoirs that had once been symbols of the empire's strength and prosperity began to show signs of wear. Without enough rice to maintain a steady workforce, the labor needed to repair and expand these structures became scarce. The temples, which had been built to honor the gods and ensure the prosperity of the empire, began to fall into disrepair. The decline of the Khmer Empire was a slow, painful process. As the environmental pressures mounted, the once great civilization that had been built on the foundation of rice cultivation began to crumble. The very thing that had supported the empire for so long, the ability to produce and manage rice, was now the thing that was pulling it apart. The failure of the rice crops led to widespread discontent, social unrest, and eventually the collapse of the empire. But what's particularly striking about this period of decline is how interconnected everything was. Rice, which had been the empire's lifeblood, was now the source of its downfall. The agricultural practices that had allowed the Khmer to build one of the most powerful empires in Southeast Asia were now part of the environmental pressures that led to its collapse. The failure of rice farming wasn't just an economic issue, it was a cultural and political one, too. The empire's very identity was tied to rice, and when that foundation began to erode, so did the empire's power and influence. Imagine standing in the ruins of Angkor, the once glorious capital of the Khmer Empire. The majestic temples, now overgrown with vines and trees, stand as silent witnesses to the grandeur of a past that is slowly being reclaimed by nature. The canals that once carried water to the rice fields are now choked with silt, and the once fertile rice paddies are now barren. The sounds of the bustling markets and the laborers working in the fields have been replaced by the quiet hum of nature, reclaiming what was once a thriving urban center. The rice that once fed the people and fueled the empire's power is no longer abundant. The empire that once harnessed the power of rice has faded into history, its memory preserved in the ruins that remain. As we reflect on the rise and fall of the Khmer Empire, we see how deeply the empire's success and eventual decline were tied to rice. Rice was not only the empire's most important crop, it was the cornerstone of its economy, its culture, and its power. The intricate systems of rice cultivation, irrigation, and distribution were the foundation of a thriving civilization, but when those systems broke down, so did the empire. The story of the Khmer Empire serves as a reminder of the delicate balance that must be maintained between human ingenuity and the natural world. It reminds us that even the most advanced civilizations can falter when that balance is disrupted. Rice, once the symbol of the empire's strength, ultimately became the symbol of its fragility. As we move through the fascinating history of rice in the Khmer Empire, it's important to remember that the decline of the empire didn't happen overnight. While environmental challenges, political instability, and social unrest contributed to the empire's weakening, the effects of these challenges were not immediately felt in all areas. In fact, the legacy of rice farming persisted long after the empire itself had fallen into ruin. Even as the Khmer Empire crumbled, the systems that had once made it so prosperous continued to shape the region in profound ways, particularly in the centuries that followed. One of the most enduring legacies of the Khmer Empire's rice farming techniques is the continued use of the rice terraces and irrigation systems that they developed. Though much of the empire fell into decline, the methods for managing rice cultivation, especially the elaborate canal systems and water management techniques, remained influential for centuries. As the empire's political power weakened, the intricate networks of canals and reservoirs that had once fed the empire's population continued to support the agricultural activities of the region. The canals and reservoirs, many of which are still visible today, became the lifeblood of modern Cambodian agriculture. Over the centuries, these systems were either abandoned, repurposed, or modified, but the fundamental principles behind them remained in use. Farmers continued to use the canals to bring water to their rice paddies, and the careful management of these systems ensured that rice remained a central part of the Cambodian economy. In modern Cambodia, rice farming remains a crucial component of the agricultural economy. Even today, rice is the staple food for millions of people, and the methods developed by the Khmer people, such as crop rotation, irrigation management, and water conservation, are still in practice. Though the empire that created these systems is long gone, the legacy of rice cultivation lives on. In many ways, the rice fields that spread across the country are a direct link to the past, a living connection to the Khmer Empire's glory and downfall. But the persistence of rice farming in Cambodia also serves as a testament to the resilience of the Khmer people. Despite the environmental, political, and social upheavals that eventually led to the empire's collapse. The people who relied on rice for their survival continued to practice the farming techniques that had been passed down from their ancestors. The Khmer may have lost their empire, but the methods for cultivating rice survived, ensuring that the country would continue to thrive in the centuries that followed. As you imagine standing in a modern Cambodian rice field, you can almost picture the generations of farmers who have worked the same land for centuries. The fields may look different today. There might be new technologies, new tools, and new ways of working the land, but at the core of it all remains the same: rice. The work that began in the time of the Khmer Empire has continued in one form or another for over 1,000 years. The modern-day rice farmers, much like their ancestors, still rely on the canals and reservoirs built long ago. They are still subject to the same environmental forces, the monsoons, the droughts, and the unpredictable patterns of rainfall. Yet, the techniques developed by the Khmer people have allowed these farmers to continue their work, providing sustenance to millions of people in the region. The survival of these ancient techniques in the face of such challenges is a powerful reminder of the legacy of rice and the Khmer Empire. Even more remarkable is the fact that the influence of rice farming in Cambodia extends beyond just agriculture. Rice has also shaped the cultural and social fabric of the country, influencing everything from cuisine to community life. In many ways, rice remains the cornerstone of Cambodian identity, much as it did during the height of the Khmer Empire. Imagine, then, the quiet rhythms of the rice harvest that have persisted through the centuries. The workers, still dressed in simple clothing, wading through the flooded fields, their hands moving skillfully to gather the rice. They work together as a community, much as their ancestors did, and the harvest is still celebrated as it was in the past, with rituals and festivities. Thanks to the enduring belief that rice is sacred, these agricultural cycles, so closely intertwined with the people, the land, and the gods, still play a central role in shaping Cambodian life today. The harvest still marks a time of thanksgiving and celebration, just as it did in the days of the Khmer Empire. And while the grandeur of the empire may have faded, the legacy of rice farming remains a living part of the culture. This legacy is not without its challenges. The modern world, with its technology and demands, has brought changes to the way rice is grown and harvested. Industrialization, climate change, and global trade have all had an impact on the way rice farming operates in Cambodia. Yet, the lessons learned from the Khmer Empire, the ancient irrigation systems, and the careful management of rice remain relevant. They serve as a reminder that even in the face of change, the foundations of a thriving civilization can continue to shape the future. Looking at the region today, it's easy to see how rice is more than just a crop. It is a symbol of continuity, of resilience, and of a culture that has endured for centuries. The Khmer Empire may have faded from history, but its legacy is alive and well in the rice fields of Cambodia, where the cycle of planting, harvesting, and celebrating continues to this day. As we reflect on this journey through time, we realize that rice is not just a food or a crop. It is the lifeblood of a culture, a civilization, and a people. From the rise of the Khmer Empire to its eventual decline and the survival of its agricultural legacy, rice has been at the heart of it all. The enduring connection between the people of Cambodia and their rice fields reminds us of the power of agriculture to shape history and culture, even as it remains a vital force in the world today. As we explore the enduring legacy of rice farming in Cambodia, it's essential to understand how the Khmer Empire's approach to rice cultivation shaped not just the landscape, but also the social structures that governed the people. The practices surrounding rice farming weren't just technical, they were intertwined with the societal and religious roles that defined the Khmer way of life. These practices ensured the sustainability of both the land and the people, influencing everything from social hierarchies to religious ceremonies, and reinforcing the deep bond between the Khmer people and their agricultural roots. In Khmer society, rice farming was not just seen as a means of subsistence, it was a symbol of social order and hierarchy. The farmers, Those who toiled in the fields were at the bottom of the social structure, while the nobility and religious figures were at the top. However, this wasn't a rigid system. The agricultural labor force was essential to the empire's prosperity, and while farmers worked the land, they were often compensated with the very thing they cultivated: rice. This exchange between labor and rice not only sustained the empire's economy, but also played a vital role in maintaining the social fabric. The Khmer social hierarchy was built on a system of tribute and labor. In exchange for protection and land, the lower classes, including the rice farmers, would give part of their harvest as a form of tax to the king or local nobility. This tribute system created a delicate balance between the elite and the working classes. Rice was the medium through which this exchange took place, and its abundance or scarcity had direct consequences for the stability of society. The more rice the fields produced, the more prosperous the empire became, and the more stable the social order appeared to be. Historians still debate the role of rice in reinforcing the social hierarchy. Some believe that the tribute system was a form of social control, where the ruling class ensured their power by maintaining control over the rice supply. Others argue that rice farming allowed for a certain level of social mobility. In a system where rice production was the backbone of the economy, those who excelled in rice cultivation could potentially rise through the ranks, gaining land or wealth in return for their hard work. Regardless of the level of mobility, what is clear is that rice was at the center of the social structure, ensuring that the empire could continue to function and prosper. The religious significance of rice also contributed to the social fabric of Khmer society. As mentioned earlier, rice was not only a practical commodity, it was considered a sacred gift from the gods. The act of planting, growing, and harvesting rice was a deeply spiritual endeavor, and many rituals were dedicated to honoring the gods who were believed to bless the land with fertility. These rituals were often conducted by the king or high-ranking priests, who were believed to hold the spiritual power to ensure a good harvest. The Khmer believed that the prosperity of their rice crops was directly linked to their spiritual relationship with the divine. Temples were built in honor of rice gods, and ceremonies were held to mark the beginning and end of the planting and harvesting seasons. The king, as the earthly representative of the gods, often led these ceremonies, symbolizing his role as both a political and spiritual leader. The bond between rice and religion was so strong that it influenced not only the agricultural calendar, but also the political and cultural calendar of the empire. Picture, if you will, a grand procession of priests and nobles heading to a temple dedicated to the rice gods. The king, adorned in his royal regalia, leads the way, holding the ceremonial sickle that will symbolize the first planting of the season. The people, gathered in the fields, watch in awe as the king performs the ritual, offering the first seeds to the gods in hopes of a bountiful harvest. The scent of incense fills the air, and the sound of chanting reverberates across the fields, creating an atmosphere of reverence and anticipation. Rice, in this context, becomes much more than food. It becomes a symbol of the divine favor that sustains the entire empire. This spiritual connection between rice and the land was not just for the elite. It permeated the lives of all the people, from the highest-ranking officials to the lowest farmer. The belief that rice was a divine gift shaped the way people viewed their work in the fields. It wasn't just about survival. It was about participating in a sacred act that ensured the prosperity of the empire. The farmers, who worked the land day in and day out, were seen as essential members of the kingdom, their labor honored as a form of devotion to the gods. As the empire declined, these religious rituals and ceremonies began to lose their significance. The once thriving rice fields, which had been tended with such care and devotion, began to deteriorate. The canals became clogged, the reservoirs emptied, and the once fertile fields were abandoned. Without the spiritual and political leadership that had sustained the rice harvest, the empire's agricultural systems began to break down, leading to a gradual collapse of the once great civilization. But the legacy of rice farming lived on, not just in the physical remnants of the empire, but in the cultural practices that continued in the region long after the fall of the Khmer Empire. The reverence for rice, the rituals surrounding its cultivation, and the importance of the harvest were passed down through generations. In the centuries that followed, the Cambodian people continued to work the same rice fields that had once supported the empire, using many of the same techniques that had been developed during the Khmer period. Today, rice continues to play a central role in Cambodian society. The same canals and reservoirs that were built by the Khmer are still in use, and the rice fields still sustain the people. While the religious rituals have evolved, the connection between the people and the land remains as strong as ever. Rice is still celebrated as a gift from the gods, and the harvest is still a time of community gathering and thanksgiving. The social structure may have changed, but rice remains at the heart of Cambodian life. The farmers, who once toiled in the fields to support the empire, are still at the heart of the nation's agricultural economy. They continue to work the land, using the ancient techniques passed down from their ancestors, and as they do, they honor the legacy of the Khmer Empire, the empire that was built on rice, that fell because of rice, and that lives on through the continued cultivation of the very crop that once sustained it. As we continue our exploration of the enduring legacy of rice farming in Cambodia, we now turn our attention to the impact of rice beyond the Khmer Empire itself. Rice, as an agricultural commodity, continued to shape the cultural, economic, and political landscape of Southeast Asia long after the fall of the empire. The traditions of rice farming passed down from the Khmer, with their intricate irrigation systems and communal labor practices, remained influential in shaping the societies of neighboring kingdoms and modern-day Cambodia. While the Khmer Empire may have collapsed, the agricultural infrastructure they left behind served as the foundation for the rice culture that thrives in Southeast Asia today. As the centuries passed, the methods of irrigation and the tools of rice farming evolved, but still remained rooted in the principles established by the Khmer. Rice continued to be the staple food of the region, and it became the central element in the economies of many Southeast Asian countries. For centuries after the fall of the Khmer Empire, Cambodia's rice production remained a symbol of national identity and pride. The rice fields, although no longer under the control of a grand empire, continued to be seen as the foundation of the Cambodian way of life. Farmers who worked these fields, often in small rural communities, continued to use the same methods and tools that had been passed down from their Khmer ancestors. The same canals, reservoirs, and irrigation systems that the Khmer had meticulously designed still functioned, even if their upkeep was no longer as grand as it once was. Despite the collapse of centralized political power, rice remained the backbone of Cambodian society. The relationship between rice and the people was one of interdependence. The farmers relied on the land for sustenance, while the land itself was shaped by the people's labor. Rice was not just a commodity, it was a cultural symbol of resilience, representing both the enduring strength of the land and the people who worked it. But rice also continued to play a key role in shaping Cambodia's relationship with neighboring countries. The historical trade routes that were once used by the Khmer Empire remained active, and rice continued to be one of the most important goods exchanged along these routes. The Khmer Empire, at its height, had been an economic powerhouse, with its rice exports fueling trade with kingdoms in India, China, and beyond. Even after the empire's decline, rice remained a sought-after commodity in the region, helping Cambodia to maintain its influence in Southeast Asia. The trade of rice also helped facilitate cultural exchanges between Cambodia and its neighbors. These interactions led to the introduction of new rice cultivation techniques, new crop varieties, and innovations in irrigation that improved yields. However, it was the rice culture itself, the shared agricultural practices, tools, and rituals that remained a unifying force, bridging cultural divides and creating a common bond across the region. In modern times, rice farming has continued to be the cornerstone of Cambodian rural life. The country remains one of the world's largest rice producers, with rice playing a central role in both the domestic economy and the global market. The government of Cambodia has worked to modernize rice farming techniques, investing in irrigation systems, improved seed varieties, and new technologies to boost production. But despite these advancements, the heart of rice farming in Cambodia remains deeply rooted in the traditions of the Khmer Empire. Imagine standing in a rice field today, surrounded by lush green paddies stretching out to the horizon. The scene may be a modern one, with tractors working the fields, but the essence of the rice culture remains unchanged. The air is thick with the scent of earth, and the sound of workers moving through the water echoes in the distance. These workers, like their ancestors before them, are still tending to the rice that feeds not only their families, but the nation. Their work is still a communal effort, an ongoing cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting that has continued for over 1,000 years. This connection between rice and the people is a powerful one. It's a reminder that, while empires rise and fall, the simple act of farming, a practice that sustains life and culture, endures. Rice, as both a food and a symbol, continues to unite the people of Cambodia and other parts of Southeast Asia. It's a symbol of resilience, continuity, and the enduring bond between the land and its people. In the global context, rice has also become a critical commodity in addressing food security. As one of the most important food staples in the world, rice continues to play a significant role in feeding millions of people. For Cambodia, rice farming remains the key to ensuring food security for its population, as well as a major export industry that supports the economy. But it's not just about the quantity of rice produced, it's about the sustainability of the agricultural systems in place. The practices established by the Khmer Empire, particularly their water management systems, continue to serve as models for modern agricultural sustainability. The challenges of climate change, soil degradation, and water scarcity have put immense pressure on rice farmers around the world. However, the lessons learned from the Khmer's understanding of the land, such as the importance of water conservation, soil preservation, and crop rotation, remain as relevant today as they were in the empire's heyday. As Cambodia faces the challenges of modern agricultural demands, these ancient principles continue to guide the country's approach to rice farming. Even as modern technology and global trade shape the future of rice production, there's something profoundly grounding about the continued reliance on rice. It's more than just a crop. Rice is a living connection to the past, a reflection of the Khmer Empire's achievements and challenges, and a central thread in the cultural identity of Cambodia. As we look ahead, it's clear that rice will continue to play a vital role in the lives of millions, just as it did in the ancient Khmer Empire. As we draw this journey to a close, think about the cycle that continues to unfold every season in the rice fields. The planting, growing, and harvesting of rice have sustained generations of Cambodians and Southeast Asians for centuries. Through the rise and fall of empires, through moments of hardship and prosperity, rice has remained constant, a symbol of life, a symbol of resilience, and a testament to the enduring bond between the people and the land. The Khmer Empire may have faded into history, but its legacy lives on in every grain of rice, in every field worked, and in the hearts of the people who continue to cultivate it. As we look deeper into the modern context of rice cultivation in Cambodia, we begin to understand that the lessons learned from the Khmer Empire's agricultural systems are not just part of a distant past. They continue to influence the future of rice farming in Southeast Asia. The Khmer's innovative irrigation methods, crop management practices, and spiritual reverence for rice have shaped how modern Cambodians approach farming today. Despite facing modern challenges like climate change, population growth, and shifting economic landscapes, Cambodia remains one of the world's top rice producers, deeply rooted in traditions that have lasted for centuries. In today's Cambodia, rice remains the centerpiece of the agricultural economy. It is not just an essential part of the diet, but a vital export product. As we consider how the rice harvested today connects with the ancient practices of the Khmer, it's easy to see the persistence of time-tested methods. From the use of traditional tools to the continued reliance on the intricate canal systems the Khmer built, rice farming today is still shaped by the past. Modern rice farming in Cambodia has become a blend of ancient techniques and contemporary technology. While mechanization, new hybrid rice strains, and automated irrigation systems are more common today, much of the old infrastructure remains intact. The canal systems that once fed acres rice paddies still flow through the countryside, albeit with more maintenance required. Farmers continue to use these canals for irrigation, just as their ancestors did. However, due to the challenges posed by climate change and water scarcity, new strategies for water management are being employed. Incorporating both modern technology and the ancient principles of conservation that the Khmer used so effectively, the agricultural landscape of Cambodia today might seem far removed from the grandeur of the Khmer Empire. Yet it is still shaped by the same deep connection between people, land, and rice. Modern rice farmers in Cambodia continue to rely on the rich soil that the Khmer nurtured centuries ago, maintaining their livelihood in a manner that would be familiar to their ancestors. The cycles of planting and harvesting that define the seasons are still central to rural life, and rice remains the most important crop grown in the country. However, this continued reliance on traditional methods does not mean that rice farming has been immune to change. Over the past few decades, the Cambodian government has worked to modernize rice farming through infrastructure improvements, better access to seeds, and more efficient irrigation methods. The aim is to increase rice yields and ensure that the country can continue to meet both its domestic needs and its export commitments. Yet, for all the advances in technology, much of Cambodia's rice farming still reflects the ancient systems set in place by the Khmer Empire. In the fields of Cambodia today, there are still echoes of the practices that powered the Khmer Empire. The use of water in rice farming continues to be a matter of utmost importance. Like their ancestors, modern-day Cambodian farmers rely on a combination of rain-fed irrigation and managed canal systems to keep their rice paddies thriving. Yet, unlike the Khmer, contemporary farmers also face the challenges of a changing climate, longer periods of drought, erratic rainfall, and rising temperatures. These challenges force farmers to adapt quickly, seeking new ways to use the land efficiently without compromising its long-term productivity. In response to these challenges, the Cambodian government has initiated a number of programs to increase rice production sustainably. These efforts include promoting the use of climate-resilient rice varieties, improving water conservation techniques, and investing in new irrigation systems that conserve water and reduce dependence on rainwater. The lessons learned from the Khmer's careful management of irrigation, water flow, and seasonal cycles are still evident today in these modern efforts. The resilience of Cambodia's rice farming culture is also deeply tied to the social structure that has emerged around it. While Cambodia's population is increasingly urbanized, rural communities still remain the heart of rice farming in the country. Farmers, especially those in the countryside, continue to work together in cooperative ways, much as they did in the Khmer era. The communal nature of rice farming persists, whether it's working together to plant or harvest, or organizing to fix an irrigation system that has become clogged. The importance of community and collaboration remains central to agricultural life. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Cambodia's modern rice farming is how it continues to reflect the spirit of the Khmer Empire in its approach to sustainability. The ancient Khmer were keenly aware of the need to preserve their natural resources. Their systems of water management were designed not just for immediate gain, but for long-term sustainability. Today's rice farmers, while using modern technology, are still learning from those ancient systems, especially in terms of conserving water, preserving soil fertility, and maintaining a balance with nature. Rice also continues to play an essential role in Cambodian culture. It is the basis of the traditional diet, with rice appearing in nearly every meal, whether served plain, fried, or as part of a dish like rice noodles or porridge. Festivals celebrating the harvest of rice continue to be an integral part of Cambodian life. The Cambodian New Year, celebrated in April, marks the beginning of the rice planting season and is a time for family gatherings, feasting, and giving thanks for the abundance of rice that the land provides. Much like the Khmer Empire, modern Cambodia's reliance on rice is not just about feeding the population, it's about sustaining a way of life, honoring a deep cultural heritage, and maintaining a sense of connection with the land. In this sense, rice transcends its status as a mere crop. It is a cultural symbol, a means of livelihood, and a link to the country's past. As you envision the landscapes of Cambodia today, where the rice fields stretch out under the same sun that once illuminated the Khmer Empire, it becomes clear how rice continues to be both a practical necessity and a symbol of the enduring spirit of a people. The Khmer Empire may have faded into history, but its legacy, embodied in the rice fields of Cambodia, remains. Rice continues to shape the present and the future, offering lessons from the past that will guide the next generations of farmers as they work to ensure a stable and sustainable future. As we look to the future of rice farming in Cambodia, it becomes clear that the legacy of the Khmer Empire's agricultural prowess continues to influence the ways in which the country approaches its most vital crop. However, this future is not without its challenges. Rice farming, while still central to Cambodia's economy and culture, must adapt to the changing global environment, technological advancements, and shifts in agricultural practices. To ensure that rice farming remains a sustainable and viable occupation for future generations, Cambodia will need to strike a balance between honoring the traditions of the past and embracing the innovations of the future. One of the most pressing challenges faced by modern rice farmers is climate change. In recent years, Cambodia has experienced more extreme weather patterns, droughts that stretch longer, heavy rains that flood fields, and increasingly unpredictable monsoon seasons. These changes threaten rice production, which is highly dependent on consistent water availability. The traditional methods of irrigation and water management that have worked for centuries may no longer be enough to meet the demands of an unpredictable climate. Farmers, particularly those in rural areas, are already feeling the effects of these changing conditions. A failed rice harvest due to drought or flooding means more than just an economic loss. It can be a devastating blow to a family's livelihood. In response, many farmers have turned to climate-resilient rice varieties that can better withstand droughts or excessive rainfall. These varieties are more robust, requiring less water and offering higher yields under adverse conditions. In many ways, these climate-resistant rice strains are the modern-day equivalent of the Khmer's deep understanding of the land, its rhythms, and how to work in harmony with nature. The Cambodian government has supported these efforts by investing in agricultural research and development, helping to introduce new rice varieties and improve water management techniques. There are also programs that focus on training farmers in sustainable farming practices, including water conservation, organic farming, and soil preservation. These initiatives are aimed at ensuring that rice farming can continue to thrive in the face of environmental changes, just as it has for centuries. But modern rice farming is not only about resilience in the face of climate challenges, it's also about economic sustainability. As Cambodia continues to grow and develop, the agricultural sector faces new economic pressures. Rice farmers, particularly smallholder farmers, often struggle with low prices for their crops, which are influenced by both domestic and international market conditions. The rise of industrial agriculture and the influx of cheaper rice imports from other countries have made it increasingly difficult for Cambodian farmers to compete on the global stage. At the same time, the rising costs of agricultural inputs, seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides place additional burdens on farmers who are already living on the margins. To address these challenges, there has been a concerted effort to promote value-added rice products. Rather than simply exporting raw rice, Cambodia is working to increase its domestic processing capacity, creating products like rice flour, rice noodles, and rice snacks. By processing rice locally, farmers can earn a higher price for their crops and create a more sustainable agricultural system. This approach not only benefits farmers, but also helps to strengthen the Cambodian economy by keeping more of the rice value within the country. Rice farming in Cambodia also faces pressures from rapid urbanization. As more and more people move from rural areas to cities in search of better opportunities, the rural workforce is shrinking. This has resulted in labor shortages in the rice fields, as younger generations are increasingly reluctant to take up farming as a livelihood. In response, the government and agricultural organizations are promoting mechanization to reduce the labor intensity of rice farming. The use of machinery, such as tractors and rice harvesters, is helping to boost productivity and ease the physical demands of farming. But it also comes with new challenges. Mechanization requires upfront investment, and many small-scale farmers may not be able to afford the equipment. In addition to mechanization, the rise of digital technology is also beginning to impact rice farming in Cambodia. Mobile apps, digital platforms, and data-driven farming techniques are helping farmers better manage their crops and improve efficiency. These innovations allow farmers to track weather patterns, monitor soil conditions, and receive advice on pest management, all from the palm of their hands. These technologies, though still in the early stages of adoption, offer great promise for enhancing rice farming practices and ensuring that farmers are better equipped to cope with the challenges of the future. Despite these advancements, however, there is still a profound need to preserve the cultural and communal aspects of rice farming. The deep connection between the Cambodian people and their rice fields is something that cannot be replaced by technology alone. The communal labor that was once central to the rice harvest continues to play an important role in rural communities, and it remains a vital part of Cambodian culture. The sense of shared purpose, the rituals that accompany the harvest, and the spiritual connection to the land are all essential aspects of rice farming that must be preserved. Imagine, for a moment, a modern Cambodian rice farmer standing in the midst of a field, his hands covered in the rich, wet soil of the earth. Surrounded by the beauty of the land he's cultivated for generations. He's using a smartphone to check the weather forecast for the week, while in the distance, a new tractor hums quietly as it plows through the fields. The world around him is changing, but the bond between the people and the land remains the same. Rice is still the lifeblood of the country, and the labor of love and dedication that goes into growing it continues to shape the future of Cambodia, just as it did centuries ago. The future of rice farming in Cambodia, then, lies in finding a balance, preserving the ancient practices that have sustained generations of farmers while embracing the innovations that will ensure rice continues to thrive in a changing world. Rice, as it has been for thousands of years, will remain central to Cambodia's culture, economy, and identity. By continuing to honor the traditions of the Khmer Empire while looking forward to the future, Cambodia can ensure that rice farming remains an essential part of its way of life for generations to come. In the end, rice is not just a crop, it is a cultural cornerstone, a link to the past, and a key to the future. Just as the Khmer Empire once flourished through its mastery of rice farming, Cambodia today continues to build on that legacy, navigating the challenges of modern agriculture while holding fast to the traditions that have endured for centuries. As we venture deeper into the future of Cambodia's rice farming, we must also examine the role of international trade in shaping the country's agricultural landscape. Cambodia's rice industry, while rooted in tradition and local needs, has also become an increasingly globalized commodity. In a world where trade, politics, and economics influence every aspect of farming, Cambodia's rice exports are poised to play a more significant role on the world stage. For centuries, rice was produced mainly for local consumption within the Khmer Empire, and while it was certainly traded within the region, it wasn't until more recent times that rice farming became a major global trade commodity for Cambodia. As global markets grew and interconnected, rice was exported to a variety of countries, becoming one of the nation's most important export goods. Today, Cambodia exports rice to countries around the world, with its fragrant rice varieties, such as jasmine rice, being particularly popular in international markets. The rise of rice exports has been an economic boon for Cambodia, helping to lift many farmers out of poverty and create new opportunities for economic growth. However, this new reliance on international trade brings with it both opportunities and challenges. One of the most pressing issues is the volatility of global rice prices, which can fluctuate dramatically due to factors such as climate change, economic policies, and trade wars. When global rice prices fall, Cambodian farmers, who are already working with thin margins, are often hit hardest, making it more difficult for them to maintain a stable income. In response to these challenges, Cambodia's government and agricultural organizations have worked to ensure that the country's rice exports remain competitive on the global market. One such effort involves increasing the quality of Cambodian rice, ensuring that it meets international standards and can command higher prices. As a result, rice farmers are now learning more about market trends, quality control, and packaging, all of which are crucial elements for competing in international markets. By focusing on premium products, Cambodia aims to carve out a niche for its rice on the global stage, ensuring its place in international trade for years to come. But the question remains, how do Cambodia's farmers continue to succeed in the global rice trade while maintaining their traditional practices? The key, it seems, lies in striking a balance. The Khmer Empire, which once thrived through its careful management of rice cultivation, left behind systems that are still relevant today. The water management techniques, the respect for the land, and the focus on community, all of these practices have endured and continue to play a role in the country's success. But now, these ancient systems must coexist with modern market forces, technological advancements, and global trade trends. As Cambodia becomes more integrated into the global economy, rice farming must adapt to the demands of international trade. This means adopting new agricultural technologies, improving yields, and finding innovative ways to meet market needs. One of the key innovations in modern rice farming is the adoption of precision agriculture, a technological approach that uses data to optimize farming practices. By using satellite imagery, drones, and sensors to monitor fields, farmers can adjust irrigation, fertilization, and pest management strategies, improving both crop yields and sustainability. These technologies, while relatively new in Cambodia, are beginning to show promising results. At the same time, there is an ongoing effort to promote organic and sustainable farming practices. The demand for organic rice is growing globally, and many consumers are now willing to pay a premium for rice that is grown without the use of harmful chemicals or pesticides. In response to this trend, some Cambodian rice farmers are shifting towards organic farming practices, focusing on sustainability and environmental protection. The goal is not just to produce rice more efficiently, but to produce rice in a way that respects the land and future generations. This approach is closely aligned with the Khmer Empire's deep respect for the land and its resources, and it serves as a bridge between traditional values and modern demands. The future of Cambodia's rice industry is also linked to its ability to adapt to climate change. As the world experiences more extreme weather patterns, the ability to predict and manage these changes will become even more critical. The rice-growing regions of Cambodia are particularly vulnerable to these climate impacts, with droughts and flooding becoming more frequent. The implementation of better water management systems and more resilient rice varieties is essential for ensuring that rice farming can continue to thrive in the face of these challenges. For example, new drought-resistant rice varieties are being developed, which can thrive with less water and in conditions of irregular rainfall. The government and agricultural organizations are focusing on researching and producing rice strains that are both resilient and high-yielding, ensuring that they can withstand the changing climate. These rice varieties are expected to become the backbone of Cambodia's rice industry, helping to secure the nation's place in the global rice market while adapting to new environmental realities. But while the future of rice farming in Cambodia is undoubtedly influenced by global trade and climate challenges, it is also deeply rooted in the cultural significance of rice. For many Cambodians, rice is not just a crop, it's a symbol of life, community, and resilience. In a rapidly changing world, the connection between the people and their land remains strong, and rice farming continues to be a vital source of pride and identity. Imagine a future where Cambodia's rice farmers, using a mix of modern technology and ancient wisdom, are thriving in an ever-changing world. Picture fields that are both highly productive and environmentally sustainable, where farmers use precision tools to monitor water levels and soil health, while still maintaining the same deep connection to the land that their ancestors had. These farmers will be part of a global network, sending high-quality, sustainable rice to markets around the world, while still holding true to the traditions that have defined Cambodia for centuries. As we look toward this future, it's clear that the legacy of rice farming in Cambodia is not just a relic of the past, it's an ongoing story that continues to shape the country's identity, its economy, and its place in the world. Rice remains the heart of Cambodia's agricultural culture, linking the past to the present, and offering hope for a future where the traditions of the Khmer Empire can continue to guide the nation forward. As we continue to explore the complexities of rice farming in Cambodia's modern era, we can't ignore the social and cultural shifts that have occurred alongside the nation's agricultural development. The impact of rice farming extends far beyond economics and trade. It is woven into the very fabric of Cambodian life. In fact, rice has become more than just a crop. It is a symbol of Cambodian identity, and its cultivation is deeply connected to the customs, rituals, and community structures that define the country. For centuries, the act of planting, growing, and harvesting rice has been an integral part of Cambodian life. The rhythm of the seasons, dictated by the cycles of planting and harvest, has shaped the cultural calendar. Festivals, rituals, and community gatherings have all been centered around rice, the food that sustains the people and the lifeblood of their economy. These rituals, many of which have their roots in the traditions of the Khmer Empire, continue to be a vibrant part of modern-day Cambodian society. The harvest season, for example, remains a time of great significance. Even in today's more urbanized world, rural communities continue to celebrate the end of the harvest with vibrant festivals that honor the earth's bounty. These harvest celebrations are deeply spiritual, reflecting the long-standing belief that rice is a sacred gift from the gods. The traditional ceremonies, with offerings of rice to the gods, express gratitude for the year's crop and ensure prosperity for the future. In these ceremonies, the rice farmers are not just laborers, they are seen as custodians of the land, caretakers of the rice fields who uphold a centuries-old tradition. The annual harvest festivals, which can still be seen in rural villages throughout Cambodia, provide a space for the community to come together in celebration and reflection. These festivals often include dancing, singing, and feasting, with rice as the central component of the meal. The entire community gathers to share the fruits of their labor and to give thanks for a bountiful harvest. It's a time to honor not only the past but the future, ensuring that the next generation understands the value of rice and the role it plays in sustaining the Cambodian way of life. In these moments, you can almost feel the connection to the past. Standing in the midst of a gathering, the laughter of children echoing in the air as families sit together around large bowls of rice. The community comes alive with the sharing of food, the singing of traditional songs, and the performance of dances that have been passed down through generations. Rice, in these moments, is more than just food. It is a symbol of life itself, a representation of the land's fertility, and a reminder of the sacred relationship between the people and their environment. While many of Cambodia's modern cities and towns have become more connected to the global economy, this deep connection to rice and the land is still very much alive in rural areas. The small farming communities that dot the countryside are often the ones who continue to uphold these traditions. The family farm, which has been passed down through generations, is the backbone of rural life. Farmers continue to pass on their knowledge of rice cultivation to their children, teaching them not only the techniques of farming, but also the cultural significance of the work. It is a knowledge that is embedded in the very soil, passed from one generation to the next. But as Cambodia's rural communities face the pressures of modernization, the younger generation is increasingly moving away from the rice fields in search of better opportunities in cities. This shift is a common phenomenon in many parts of the world, where the younger generation seeks out jobs in urban centers, leaving behind the traditional ways of life. As more and more Cambodians leave rural areas for the city, rice farming faces the challenge of maintaining its cultural relevance. The question arises, how can Cambodia preserve the cultural practices surrounding rice farming while embracing the inevitable changes brought by urbanization? How can the sacred traditions of rice farming, which have been integral to Cambodian identity for centuries, continue to thrive in a rapidly changing world? The answer may lie in finding ways to combine the old with the new. By modernizing farming techniques and integrating new technologies, Cambodia can ensure that rice farming remains viable and sustainable for future generations. At the same time, it is essential to preserve the cultural traditions that have been passed down for centuries. There is an opportunity to create a system where rice farming can be both economically viable and culturally enriching, where modern technology supports, rather than replaces, traditional practices. For example, programs that encourage young people to return to the rice fields, armed with new knowledge of sustainable farming practices and modern agricultural techniques, could help bridge the gap between old and new. These programs could also help preserve the cultural heritage of rice farming while ensuring that it remains a viable source of income for future generations. By blending traditional wisdom with modern innovation, Cambodia can create a future for rice farming that honors the past while embracing the opportunities of the present. The cultural importance of rice also extends to the wider community. For Cambodians, rice is not just a food that sustains the body, it is a symbol of unity, resilience, and continuity. It has been the centerpiece of communal meals, celebrations, and rituals for generations, and its significance is ingrained in the collective consciousness of the Cambodian people. The continued reverence for rice ensures that it will remain a central part of Cambodian culture for generations to come. In modern Cambodia, rice is still a symbol of national pride. The government has worked to promote rice, a key component of the national identity, emphasizing its cultural significance and its role in the economy. Rice, as both a food and a symbol, continues to unify the people, reminding them of the values that have sustained their culture for centuries. It serves as a reminder of the resilience of the Cambodian people and their deep connection to the land. Imagine, for a moment, a future where rice farming in Cambodia has adapted to the modern world while retaining its cultural significance. Farmers, working together in a spirit of community, continue to harvest the rice that sustains the nation, with new technologies ensuring sustainability and higher yields. The traditional harvest festivals are still celebrated, with families gathering to give thanks for the rice that feeds them. In this future, rice is not just a crop, it is a living symbol of Cambodian culture, a thread that connects the past to the present and the future. As Cambodia moves forward, rice will remain central to its identity, just as it has been for centuries. The challenges that the country faces in maintaining its agricultural heritage are real, but they are not insurmountable. By blending the wisdom of the past with the opportunities of the future, Cambodia can continue to build on the legacy of the Khmer Empire, ensuring that rice remains a vital part of the nation's economy, culture, and way of life for generations to come. As we reflect on the central role rice has played in shaping Cambodia's cultural identity, it's important to acknowledge the resilience of the nation's agricultural system, especially in the face of modern-day challenges. The Khmer Empire, with its vast infrastructure and sophisticated irrigation techniques, established a legacy of rice farming that continues to thrive in Cambodia today. However, as the country navigates the complexities of globalization, climate change, and technological advancement, the future of rice farming remains uncertain. This section will explore how Cambodia can build on the foundations left by the Khmer Empire, adapting to current challenges while preserving the core values and traditions of rice cultivation. A critical factor in Cambodia's ongoing rice success is its capacity to adapt to changing global market demands. As the country becomes more integrated into the global economy, rice has not only remained a staple crop, but also a valuable export commodity. Rice farming in Cambodia is becoming increasingly linked to international trade dynamics, particularly in Southeast Asia. Cambodia exports a large amount of rice, particularly its fragrant varieties, to countries across the world. While this is a boon for the economy, it also exposes the country to the volatility of global rice prices and trade agreements. Cambodia's future in rice farming will depend heavily on its ability to remain competitive in the global rice market. One key to this competitiveness is quality control. The country's fragrant jasmine rice is particularly popular in international markets, and ensuring its quality through modern techniques, such as better seed management, improved irrigation, and post-harvest handling, will be crucial to maintaining demand. Additionally, as global concerns about environmental sustainability continue to rise, more and more countries are seeking sustainably produced rice. Cambodia can capitalize on this shift by investing in organic farming practices, ensuring that its rice exports are only of the highest quality, but also environmentally friendly. On the domestic front, the government has taken proactive steps to modernize rice farming through initiatives aimed at improving irrigation systems, introducing new rice varieties, and fostering better farmer education. Cambodia is positioning itself to meet future agricultural challenges. Precision agriculture, using digital tools to optimize water usage, fertilizer application, and pest control, is slowly being introduced to rice farmers, even in rural regions. These tools can greatly improve rice yields while conserving valuable resources, like water, which is critical in a country experiencing the unpredictability of climate change. However, modernizing agriculture in Cambodia also comes with its own set of challenges. Rice farming remains a labor-intensive industry, and while mechanization is slowly being introduced, many smallholder farmers still rely on traditional methods. These farmers face challenges in affording machinery, access to modern inputs, and maintaining a steady labor force as younger generations move to cities in search of better opportunities. To address these challenges, the government and various NGOs are working together to provide support for small-scale farmers, from subsidies for machinery to training programs on modern farming techniques. Moreover, community-based approaches to agriculture are being promoted to ensure that the rural population remains engaged and empowered. The success of Cambodia's rice farming system has always been tied to communal labor, and as the country modernizes, these communal bonds must be preserved. By offering cooperative models where farmers can share resources, knowledge, and technology, the agricultural sector can become more sustainable and efficient. These community-focused initiatives not only improve agricultural outcomes, but also help preserve the cultural traditions that are so vital to rural life in Cambodia. Looking toward the future, it is essential that Cambodia continue to balance modernization with the preservation of its agricultural heritage. The rice farming methods that have been passed down through generations, the intricate water management systems, and the cultural significance of rice should remain at the heart of the nation's agricultural identity. Yet, to ensure that the next generation of Cambodians can continue to thrive as rice farmers, the country must evolve and adopt practices that will make rice farming more resilient to the challenges of the 21st century. The challenges posed by climate change are perhaps the most pressing concern. The unpredictability of weather patterns, with rising temperatures, droughts, and heavy rainfall, threatens the rice crops that Cambodian farmers depend on. The impact of climate change on agriculture worldwide cannot be overstated, and it is crucial that Cambodia take steps to mitigate these effects. Some of the traditional farming practices developed by the Khmer Empire, such as crop rotation and water management, continue to be effective tools for resilience. But alongside these traditional methods, new technologies and strategies are needed to safeguard the future of rice farming. In response to these environmental challenges, the Cambodian government has introduced initiatives focused on improving water conservation, enhancing soil health, and developing more climate-resistant rice strains. These modern advancements are built upon the same principles of sustainability that the Khmer Empire followed. While the technology may be new, the fundamental respect for the land and the delicate balance between agriculture and the environment remains unchanged. It's important to note that Cambodia is not alone in facing these challenges. Rice farming is a crucial part of life in many countries in Southeast Asia, and there is much to be gained from regional cooperation. Collaborative efforts between countries in the Mekong River Basin, for example, could help address shared concerns about water management, climate resilience, and rice trade. By working together, these nations can develop strategies that will ensure the sustainability of rice farming across the region, drawing on the rich agricultural traditions that have shaped Southeast Asia for centuries. As we conclude this journey through the legacy of the Khmer Empire's rice farming and its continued influence on modern Cambodia, we are reminded of the incredible connection between the people, the land, and the crop. Rice, once the cornerstone of the Khmer Empire, continues to shape Cambodia's future, whether through the careful management of water, the adoption of modern farming techniques, or the preservation of cultural traditions. Rice farming remains a symbol of the resilience and ingenuity of the Cambodian people. Rice is not just a crop, it is a thread that connects the past to the present, the rural to the urban, and the local to the global. The challenges facing Cambodia's rice industry are significant, but the lessons learned from the Khmer Empire provide a blueprint for resilience, sustainability, and success. With a strong focus on innovation, sustainability, and community, Cambodia's rice farmers will continue to feed the nation and the world, ensuring that rice remains a vital part of Cambodia's economy, culture, and identity for generations to come. As we journey into the final stages of our exploration of rice farming in Cambodia, it's important to recognize how deeply embedded rice is in the cultural, social, and spiritual fabric of Cambodian life. Beyond the fields, beyond the trade, beyond even the economic impacts, rice is a constant presence in the lives of the Cambodian people. It's woven into every aspect of daily existence, from the food they eat to the festivals they celebrate, and even the way they think about the land itself. Rice, in its many forms, remains a core element of Cambodia's identity. We've seen how rice farming once provided the foundation for the Khmer Empire's power and prosperity. Now, in modern Cambodia, rice remains equally important, symbolizing not only sustenance, but community and continuity. The labor of the rice farmer, the same hands that once tilled the soil of the Khmer Empire, continues to shape the culture and identity of the Cambodian people today. As the globalized world continues to affect Cambodia, rice farming has become a symbol of both resilience and adaptation. The persistence of rice farming practices, passed down through generations, speaks to the enduring connection between the Cambodian people and their land. This relationship is not just practical, but profoundly cultural. Rice, in Cambodia, is far more than just food. It is a symbol of unity, tradition, and continuity. Every year, as the harvest season approaches, families and communities gather to share in the work, the rituals, and the rewards of their labor. Whether through the planting of rice or the rituals of harvest, these practices bring people together. Much like the communal celebrations that marked the harvest in the time of the Khmer Empire, modern harvest festivals in rural Cambodia are times of joy and thanksgiving, celebrating not only the work of the past year, but also the enduring importance of rice in sustaining life. Imagine, for a moment, being in a Cambodian village during the harvest season. The air is thick with anticipation, and as the sun begins to set, the fields come alive with the sounds of workers in the paddies, cutting and bundling the golden stalks of rice. But it isn't just the work that makes the moment special. It's the community that surrounds it. Families and neighbors gather, sharing food, laughter, and stories. The harvest is not just about the crop, it's about strengthening bonds and reaffirming a shared connection to the land. The rice may be harvested, but it is the communal spirit that ensures its continued cultivation and the ties that bind the people to the land. Beyond the harvest, rice is embedded in daily life. It is the food that sustains families, the central ingredient of every meal, the base upon which the flavors of Cambodian cuisine are built. From rice porridge in the morning to fried rice at night, the presence of rice is constant. Even in times of celebration, whether a wedding, a religious ceremony, or a national holiday, rice is central to the feast. The act of sharing a meal is a symbolic gesture of community and hospitality, and the rice at the center of the table reflects the interconnectedness of the people who gather around it. But, as we reflect on the role of rice in Cambodian life, it's also crucial to recognize how the importance of rice extends beyond the individual. Rice farming has the potential to unite communities and create a sense of shared purpose. It is a connection to both the land and the ancestors who once worked it. For the Cambodian people, rice is both a literal and symbolic link to the past, a reminder of the legacy of the Khmer Empire and the continuity of agricultural traditions that have been passed down through generations. In this context, it's clear that rice farming is not just a means of feeding the population. It is a way of preserving and passing on the cultural heritage of Cambodia. Through rice farming, the values of the Khmer Empire, respect for the land, communal cooperation, and reverence for the harvest continue to thrive. The rituals and ceremonies that once accompanied the planting and harvesting of rice are still practiced today, ensuring that the spiritual connection to the land remains as strong as ever. In many ways, the future of rice farming in Cambodia depends on the ability of the younger generation to embrace these traditions while also adapting to the modern world. While many young people have migrated to urban centers in search of better opportunities, there is hope that a new generation of farmers will return to the rice fields, equipped with modern tools and knowledge, but also committed to preserving the cultural practices that have sustained the land for centuries. Through programs that focus on agricultural education and sustainability, the younger generation can learn not only how to increase productivity, but also how to honor the traditions of the past. The enduring cultural significance of rice farming in Cambodia is not only evident in the work of the farmers, but also in the way rice shapes national identity. Rice is seen as a symbol of the Cambodian people's resilience in the face of adversity. Just as the Khmer Empire was built on rice, so too is modern Cambodia's cultural strength grounded in the cultivation of rice. The land, the people, and the rice are intertwined, inseparable in their connection. Rice farming is not just an economic activity. It is a cultural practice that unites Cambodians, from the smallest rural village to the bustling streets of Phnom Penh. As Cambodia faces the future, rice will continue to be a defining element of its identity. It represents not just survival, but community, tradition, and continuity. It is a symbol of the nation's ability to adapt, to face challenges, and to honor the lessons of the past. Just as the Khmer Empire built its power upon rice, modern Cambodia will continue to build its future upon the same foundations, deeply rooted in the land and the traditions of its people. Rice, in the end, is more than just a crop. It is a reflection of Cambodia's spirit, a thread that connects the past to the present and the future. Through the work of the farmers, the wisdom of the elders, and the energy of the younger generation, Cambodia's rice legacy will continue to thrive. Rice is not only the food that sustains the nation, it is the cultural lifeblood of the Cambodian people, ensuring that their identity endures and evolves, generation after generation. As we bring our journey through Cambodia's rich history of rice cultivation to its final chapters, it is important to acknowledge how far Cambodia has come in terms of understanding, innovating, and protecting its agricultural practices. The challenges faced by modern Cambodia, climate change, globalization, economic pressures, and social changes, have been met with determination and resilience, reflecting the strength of the very agricultural roots that have sustained the Cambodian people for centuries. Yet, as we look toward the future, it's vital to consider not just the past and present of rice farming, but the role of rice in shaping the long-term prosperity and sustainability of Cambodia. The agricultural policies currently in place in Cambodia are pushing for a future where rice farming isn't only about feeding the population, but also about ensuring environmental sustainability and securing food sovereignty. In other words, Cambodia is focusing on a future where it can not only produce enough rice for its own needs, but also maintain its position as a major player in the global rice trade, all while addressing the environmental consequences of large-scale farming. Achieving this balance is no small feat, especially considering the growing pressure on water, resources, and the need for agricultural diversification. However, with the lessons passed down from the Khmer Empire, Cambodia is taking measured steps to address these concerns. Perhaps one of the most important initiatives being pursued today is the promotion of sustainable agricultural practices. Farmers, both old and new, are being encouraged to implement practices that focus on long-term soil health, reduced water consumption, and the protection of biodiversity. In particular, initiatives such as agroecology are gaining traction, advocating for farming methods that work with nature rather than against it. Agroecological practices are rooted in traditional farming knowledge that was refined by the Khmer Empire's own understanding of land management, irrigation, and crop diversity. By embracing both modern techniques and ancient wisdom, Cambodia is working toward a future where rice farming remains central to the country's prosperity, but is also environmentally sound. One of the most exciting advancements is the push for organic rice farming. As global demand for organic products grows, Cambodia has the opportunity to differentiate itself in the market by offering high-quality, organic rice that has been grown without synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. The allure of organic rice is not only in its health benefits, but also in the promise of sustainable farming practices that protect the land for future generations. The organic movement is not just about responding to consumer demands. It is a direct reflection of the Khmer people's long-standing connection to the earth and the deep respect for the land that sustains them. By embracing organic methods, Cambodia has the chance to build on the foundation laid by the Khmer Empire, promoting a model of agriculture that values the soil, water, and people. Yet, while these advances in farming techniques and sustainability are promising, the future of Cambodia's rice farming also requires attention to the social structures that have supported it for generations. Rice farming in Cambodia is, at its heart, a communal endeavor. The cooperative nature of rice farming, where people come together to share the work of planting, weeding, and harvesting, has been vital to its success. This communal spirit, however, is under threat from rapid urbanization and the ongoing migration of youth to cities. As young people seek opportunities in urban centers, the rural labor force has been shrinking, leaving older generations to carry the burden of rice farming. This demographic shift poses a challenge to Cambodia's long-term food security and its rice farming future. Yet, there is hope. Programs aimed at reconnecting youth with rural communities and promoting rice farming as a viable and rewarding profession are gaining ground. In some rural areas, young people are being trained in modern farming techniques, sustainable practices, and entrepreneurship, allowing them to not only farm rice, but also create businesses around rice production, processing, packaging, and distributing. The key to ensuring that Cambodia's agricultural traditions continue is to inspire the next generation to return to the fields, armed with both modern tools and an understanding of the cultural value of rice farming. It is also important to consider the role of rice in Cambodia's food security moving forward. Cambodia, despite its success in rice production, still faces challenges in terms of food security. While rice is the main staple, it is not always enough to ensure that the population has access to the nutrients it needs. Diversifying agricultural production and improving the accessibility of other essential crops like vegetables, fruits, and legumes will help address this challenge. Ensuring a more diverse and resilient agricultural system will not only help the country meet its food needs, but will also safeguard against the risks posed by climate change and other external factors that can impact rice yields. Moreover, Cambodia's ongoing push to improve infrastructure plays a crucial role in securing the future of rice farming. The government's investment in irrigation systems, transportation networks, and rural education is paving the way for a more sustainable and competitive rice farming industry. For example, improvements in road infrastructure are helping farmers get their crops to market more efficiently, reducing transportation costs and wastage. And as modern agricultural practices and technologies become more widely available, Cambodian farmers are finding new ways to increase yields while decreasing the environmental impact of their farming. Imagine, for a moment, standing in a Cambodian rice field in the future, a field where the hard work of farmers is complemented by modern technology. You see a farmer walking through the field, his phone in hand, checking the weather app and monitoring soil conditions via sensors. The field is lush and green, the water flowing efficiently through the channels, and the farmer is harvesting a bumper crop of organic rice that will be exported around the world. The community surrounding the field is buzzing with activity. Young people who have returned to the land, working alongside their elders to ensure that rice continues to be a central part of Cambodian life. The Harvest Festival, once celebrated only in the villages, is now a national event, with people from all over the country gathering to honor the land and the work that goes into producing the rice. This vision of the future is not a distant dream but a tangible reality that Cambodia can build toward. With a combination of traditional wisdom, modern technology, and community support, Cambodia's rice industry can thrive in a rapidly changing world. The legacy of the Khmer Empire is not something locked away in the past. It is alive today in the fields, in the water systems, in the harvest, and in the spirit of the Cambodian people. As Cambodia continues to embrace change and progress, rice will remain at the heart of the nation's identity. From the time of the Khmer Empire to the present day, rice has sustained Cambodia's people. The next chapter in this long story is one of adaptation and resilience, one where the lessons of the past guide the nation's future in securing a prosperous and sustainable agricultural system for the generations to come. As we approach the final stages of our journey through Cambodia's agricultural landscape, it's essential to look beyond rice as simply a crop and recognize the broader environmental and cultural implications of rice farming. Rice, as both a crop and a symbol, has shaped the identity and future of the Cambodian people in ways that go far beyond the field. In understanding the future of rice farming in Cambodia, we must acknowledge the delicate balance between progress, sustainability, and the preservation of the cultural traditions that have defined rice cultivation for generations. One of the most pressing challenges facing Cambodia today is the environmental impact of modern agriculture. As the country seeks to increase rice production to meet growing demand, there are growing concerns about the strain this places on the environment. Deforestation, soil degradation, and water scarcity have all been cited as significant challenges to long-term sustainability. As we look toward the future, Cambodia must find ways to increase rice production while minimizing its impact on the land, ensuring that future generations of farmers are able to sustain the rice harvests that have been the cornerstone of the nation's economy and culture for centuries. The Khmer Empire was built on a deep understanding of the land. The ancient Khmer people managed their rice fields through carefully constructed irrigation systems, knowing that the balance of water and soil was key to a successful harvest. This careful stewardship of the land is a tradition that continues in Cambodia today. Modern agricultural practices, though increasingly mechanized and technologically advanced, still rely on the foundational principles established by the Khmer Empire. As the country strives for increased productivity and environmental sustainability, it is crucial to return to these ancient principles, incorporating them into modern farming methods. Sustainable agriculture is at the forefront of this effort. In response to the environmental challenges posed by climate change and the increasing demands of modern farming, Cambodia has taken significant steps toward promoting more sustainable practices. The introduction of organic farming, agroforestry, and conservation agriculture is helping to reduce the negative environmental impacts of rice farming. These practices focus on maintaining soil health, reducing pesticide use, and ensuring that water resources are used more efficiently. Agroecology, a farming system that integrates ecological principles into farming, is also gaining momentum in Cambodia. It emphasizes the use of locally available resources, such as compost and natural fertilizers, to enhance the sustainability of rice farming while preserving the health of the ecosystem. Rice farmers in Cambodia are slowly but steadily adopting these methods. While traditional farming techniques still dominate in rural areas, there is a growing interest in organic farming and sustainable practices. Young farmers, particularly those returning to the land from the cities, are embracing these methods, combining ancient wisdom with modern technology. In rural villages, organic rice farming is being promoted as a way to create healthier food for both local consumption and export, offering an alternative to conventional rice farming that relies heavily on chemical inputs. This shift towards sustainability is not just about the future of rice, it's about the future of Cambodia itself. Rice farming is deeply tied to the country's food security, economy, and culture. By implementing sustainable practices, Cambodia can ensure that rice farming remains a viable and productive industry for generations to come. This is crucial, especially in the context of climate change, which threatens the very foundation of Cambodia's agricultural system. By adopting more sustainable farming practices, Cambodia will be better equipped to handle the unpredictability of weather patterns and the effects of climate change, ensuring that its rice fields remain a source of livelihood for the people. Moreover, Cambodia's commitment to sustainability also reflects the values of the Khmer Empire, values that centered around respect for the land, harmony with nature, and the careful management of resources. The Khmer understood that the land was not something to be exploited, but something to be cared for. This reverence for the earth continues to shape Cambodia's agricultural policies today, as the country seeks to balance development with environmental preservation. It is also important to recognize that the global rice market continues to play a significant role in Cambodia's agricultural future. As Cambodia strengthens its position as a major rice exporter, it will be increasingly important for the country to market its rice as a sustainable and high-quality product. Consumers around the world are becoming more conscious of the environmental impact of the products they purchase, and there is growing demand for sustainably grown rice. Cambodia's commitment to sustainable rice farming will not only ensure food security at home, but will also enhance the country's competitiveness in the global market. Picture a future where Cambodia's rice fields are not only abundant, but also resilient, where technology and tradition work hand in hand to protect the environment while ensuring that the economy continues to thrive. In this future, rice farming will remain central to Cambodia's way of life, but it will also be an industry that embraces innovation and sustainability. The principles of environmental stewardship, so central to the Khmer Empire's agricultural system, will continue to guide Cambodia's rice farmers as they meet the challenges of the 21st century. The connection between rice and Cambodia's cultural identity will never fade. Rice is not simply a commodity, it is a part of the country's soul. As Cambodia moves forward, it will continue to honor its agricultural heritage, balancing the need for increased productivity with the imperative of environmental responsibility. Rice farming, deeply tied to the nation's past, will be integral to its future, shaped by the traditions of the Khmer Empire, but also embracing the innovations needed to thrive in a modern, globalized world. The challenge for Cambodia will be to continue its rich agricultural tradition while adapting to the changing world around it. The future of rice farming in Cambodia is one of balance between honoring ancient practices and embracing the innovations that will sustain the land for generations to come. With a commitment to sustainability, community, and environmental stewardship, Cambodia can ensure that rice will continue to be a symbol of prosperity, resilience, and identity. As we come closer to the end of our exploration, it's important to reflect on the broader lessons that Cambodia's rice farming story holds, not just for the country itself, but for the world. The connection between rice, culture, and the environment offers critical insights into how ancient agricultural practices can inform and shape modern agricultural solutions. The Khmer Empire, with its sophisticated rice farming techniques, has provided the foundation upon which Cambodia stands today, and the lessons learned over centuries can help guide not only Cambodia, but the global community in addressing some of the most pressing agricultural challenges of our time. First and foremost, Cambodia's experience offers a valuable example of how agriculture can be a driver of both cultural and economic prosperity. The Khmer Empire was built on its ability to harness the land and its resources, particularly rice, to fuel its growth and power. In many ways, modern Cambodia mirrors this. Rice farming is still at the heart of the country's economy, providing livelihoods for millions and acting as a central component of the national identity. While much has changed in terms of technology and global trade, the fundamental role of rice remains the same. It is the cornerstone of Cambodian society, just as it was in the time of the Khmer Empire. The empire's success was tied directly to its agricultural practices, and today, Cambodia's economic growth is similarly tied to its ability to maintain a robust rice farming system. Yet, while rice farming has been central to Cambodia's prosperity, the challenges the country faces today are complex. Climate change, rapid urbanization, and global economic pressures threaten the sustainability of rice farming as an industry. This underscores the need for agricultural practices that are not only efficient and productive, but also resilient and sustainable. Cambodia's ongoing journey to modernize rice farming while retaining traditional methods offers important lessons for other nations facing similar challenges. It's clear that maintaining the connection between rice, culture, and the land is essential to ensuring that the agricultural sector can continue to thrive in the face of adversity. As Cambodia adapts to the realities of modern agriculture, the country's emphasis on sustainability remains a guiding principle. The Khmer Empire's agricultural practices were deeply respectful of the natural environment, and this philosophy continues to shape Cambodia's agricultural policies today. The notion that the land is a sacred trust to be managed with care and foresight is as relevant now as it was during the height of the Khmer Empire. As Cambodia embraces new technologies and techniques, it is doing so with an eye toward ensuring that future generations can benefit from the same resources that have sustained the country for centuries. The future of Cambodia's rice farming industry will be defined not only by the yields it produces, but also by the way in which it balances the demands of productivity with the need for environmental protection. This emphasis on sustainability is especially important in the context of global food security. As the global population continues to grow, the world's ability to feed everyone will depend on the continued productivity of the agricultural sector. But it will also depend on our collective ability to produce food in ways that minimize environmental harm and maximize efficiency. Cambodia, with its rich agricultural heritage, is in a unique position to lead by example. Its rice farming practices, rooted in centuries of tradition, can serve as a model for sustainable agriculture. By incorporating modern technology into these practices, Cambodia has the opportunity to not only feed its own people, but to contribute to global efforts to ensure that the world's growing population has access to sufficient, nutritious food. At the heart of Cambodia's rice farming legacy, a profound respect for the land and its resources. This deep-rooted connection between rice and the land is something that modern Cambodia can preserve and build upon. The future of rice farming in Cambodia doesn't just lie in the ability to produce more rice. It lies in the ability to produce rice sustainably, ensuring that the land remains fertile and the environment remains intact for future generations. In the global context, the story of Cambodia's rice farming is a reminder of the power of agricultural heritage. The methods and systems developed by the Khmer Empire have been shaped by the conditions of their time, but their principles remain timeless. Rice farming is not just about feeding the population, it is about preserving culture, protecting the environment, and building a resilient future. Cambodia's rice farming practices are emblematic of the kind of thoughtful, sustainable agriculture that the world will need to embrace in order to meet the challenges of the future. As we reflect on the future of rice farming in Cambodia, it's clear that the country is at a crossroads. The lessons of the Khmer Empire, though ancient, are still relevant today. By focusing on sustainability, community, and environmental stewardship, Cambodia can ensure that its rice industry remains a cornerstone of its economy, culture, and identity. And in doing so, it can serve as a model for other countries that face similar challenges in balancing agricultural productivity with environmental sustainability. In the coming years, rice will continue to play a vital role in Cambodia's agricultural landscape, but the future of rice farming will require innovation, resilience, and adaptability. By embracing both traditional practices and modern technologies, Cambodia can ensure that rice remains a central part of its future, nourishing its people, sustaining its environment, and connecting the country to the world in meaningful ways. The lessons learned from the Khmer Empire, combined with a forward-thinking approach to agriculture, can pave the way for a sustainable and prosperous future. As we close the chapter on the Khmer Empire's rice farming legacy and look to the future of Cambodia's agricultural sector, it is clear that rice will remain the heart of the nation. From the early days of the Khmer Empire to the present moment, rice has been a symbol of life, prosperity, and resilience. As Cambodia continues to navigate the complexities of the modern world, it must hold fast to the enduring lessons of the past, honoring the land, preserving its cultural heritage, and adapting to new challenges. The future of rice farming in Cambodia is bright, and the legacy of the Khmer Empire will continue to guide the nation toward a sustainable and prosperous future. As we move towards the final reflections on Cambodia's future in rice farming, it's essential to recognize that while rice farming is a cornerstone of Cambodian life and a symbol of cultural pride, it also presents an opportunity for the country to contribute to the global discourse on sustainable agriculture. The lessons learned from Cambodia's past, both the successes and the challenges, can provide valuable insights for other nations facing similar agricultural dilemmas. In this section, we'll explore the ways in which Cambodia can leverage its rich history of rice cultivation to inspire global agricultural practices, focusing on sustainability, community-driven innovation, and environmental stewardship. Cambodia's rice farming practices stand as a testament to the balance that was once achieved between nature and human ingenuity. The Khmer Empire, with its sophisticated irrigation systems, agricultural practices, and reverence for the land, demonstrated how humans could work with the earth to create a thriving, sustainable agricultural system. Modern Cambodia is at a point where it must build upon that legacy, not only to meet the demands of its own population, but to be part of a global conversation on how to grow food sustainably in a rapidly changing world. Global food security is one of the most significant challenges we face in the 21st century. With the global population projected to reach nearly 10 billion by 2050, the world will need to produce more food than ever before. Rice is one of the most widely consumed staple foods, and it will play a critical role in meeting global food demands. However, the methods used to produce rice must evolve to address the many challenges of the modern world. Climate change, water scarcity, and soil degradation are just a few of the factors threatening the future of rice farming. Cambodia, with its centuries of experience in rice cultivation, has an opportunity to be at the forefront of this shift, using its traditional methods alongside modern technology to create a model for sustainable rice farming. One of the most significant advantages that Cambodia has is its rich agricultural heritage. The water management techniques that were developed during the Khmer Empire's peak are still used in some form today. The ancient canals and reservoirs that once supported the rice fields of Angkor still present, though they require careful maintenance to remain effective. This ancient knowledge of water conservation and soil management can be applied in modern-day farming to make the most of limited resources. In regions where water is becoming increasingly scarce, Cambodia's agricultural practices can serve as a model for how to manage water resources sustainably. In the broader context, Cambodia's commitment to sustainable rice farming could serve as a blueprint for other nations in Southeast Asia and beyond that rely heavily on rice for their livelihoods. By combining traditional agricultural practices with modern technology, Cambodia can contribute to the global discussion on how to produce food sustainably. The adoption of climate-resilient rice strains, the implementation of precision agriculture, and the promotion of organic farming just some of the ways Cambodia can modernize its rice farming industry while staying true to its cultural and agricultural roots. In addition to sustainability, Cambodia's rice farming industry also represents an opportunity for social innovation. As we've seen, rice farming has always been a communal activity in Cambodia, and this spirit of cooperation continues to be an essential part of rural life today. In the future, Cambodia can leverage this communal model by fostering cooperatives and farmer groups that share resources, knowledge, and technology. These cooperatives can help smallholder farmers access modern farming inputs, equipment, and markets, while also ensuring that the benefits of rice farming are more evenly distributed across society. One area where Cambodia could further innovate is in the value-added processing of rice. As the global market for rice continues to grow, there is a significant opportunity for Cambodia to diversify its rice exports by processing rice into value-added products like rice flour, rice noodles, and rice snacks. By investing in rice processing facilities and promoting these products both domestically and internationally, Cambodia can increase the value of its rice industry and provide additional income for farmers. This would not only help to stabilize the rice market, but also increase employment and drive economic growth. The potential for Cambodia to become a leader in sustainable rice farming goes beyond just the economic or agricultural realms. It is also deeply tied to the preservation of Cambodia's cultural heritage. Rice farming in Cambodia is a way of life that has been passed down through generations, and its importance extends far beyond the fields. The spiritual connection to the land, the communal work, and the rituals surrounding rice are integral parts of Cambodia's identity. In an age where the pressures of modernity often cause cultural erosion, rice farming offers an opportunity to preserve and celebrate Cambodian traditions. Imagine a future where the next generation of Cambodians is empowered to carry on the traditions of rice farming while also embracing modern techniques. Farmers, trained in sustainable agricultural practices, work in fields that are not only more productive but also more resilient to the challenges of climate change. They continue to celebrate the harvest with the same sense of community and reverence that their ancestors did, knowing that they are carrying on a tradition that has sustained Cambodia for centuries. In this future, Cambodia's rice farmers are not just feeding the nation, they are feeding the world, contributing to global food security, and leading the way in sustainable agriculture. The principles of the Khmer Empire, with their respect for the land and their innovation in farming techniques, will live on through Cambodia's commitment to sustainable rice production. Rice is more than just a crop for Cambodia. It is a living connection to the past, a driving force of the present, and a critical part of the future. As the country faces the challenges of modern agriculture, it must continue to rely on the lessons of the past while embracing the innovations of the future. Through sustainable practices, innovation, and community-driven efforts, Cambodia can ensure that rice farming remains central to its identity, prosperity, and role in the global agricultural landscape. The legacy of the Khmer Empire lives on in every grain of rice, in every field worked, and in every meal shared. Rice farming is not just a job, it is a way of life that has sustained Cambodia for centuries, and with thoughtful innovation and dedication, it will continue to nourish the nation and the world for generations to come. As we approach the conclusion of our exploration of rice farming in Cambodia, it is clear that the journey we have traced, From the ancient ingenuity of the Khmer Empire to the modern-day challenges and opportunities, reflects a broader narrative about humanity's relationship with agriculture, sustainability, and cultural preservation. Rice, for Cambodia, is far more than a crop. It is a living testament to the resilience of the Cambodian people, a symbol of their history, and a critical element of their future. The challenges facing Cambodia's rice farming today, climate change, market volatility, urbanization, and the pressures of modernization, are not unique to the country. Many nations around the world are grappling with similar issues, particularly those that rely on agriculture as the backbone of their economy. Yet, Cambodia's ability to learn from the past, to build on its agricultural heritage, and to innovate in the face of these challenges positions it to be a leader in the global conversation on sustainable agriculture. The key to Cambodia's success in the coming decades lies in finding a balance. The country must continue to honor its agricultural legacy while adapting to the demands of a rapidly changing world. The ancient wisdom of the Khmer Empire, its respect for the land, its focus on water management, its communal approach to farming, still holds valuable lessons for the modern era. But these lessons must be supplemented with modern technologies and sustainable practices to ensure that rice farming can thrive in a world increasingly affected by climate change. Cambodia's investment in rice farming innovation is already beginning to pay off. From the development of climate-resilient rice varieties to the adoption of sustainable farming techniques, the country is taking proactive steps to ensure that rice remains central to its agricultural future. The growth of the organic rice sector is also an important development. As global markets increasingly favor sustainably grown food, Cambodia's ability to provide organic rice can offer it a unique competitive advantage in the global marketplace. Additionally, Cambodia's focus on improving irrigation systems, enhancing rural infrastructure, and supporting smallholder farmers will help to future-proof the rice industry. By improving access to modern farming tools, providing educational opportunities for young farmers, and promoting farmer cooperatives, Cambodia can ensure that the next generation is equipped to carry on the rich tradition of rice farming. This will also help to address the social challenges of rural depopulation by making rice farming an attractive, viable, and sustainable livelihood for young Cambodians. However, the future of Cambodia's rice farming is not solely reliant on technology and infrastructure. It is also about the preservation of the cultural values that have shaped the country's relationship with rice for centuries. The connection between the Cambodian people and their land is not just practical, it is spiritual. Rice farming, as practiced in Cambodia, is deeply embedded in the nation's cultural and religious life. Harvest festivals, rituals, and the reverence for rice as a sacred gift from the gods are an integral part of the Cambodian identity. These traditions, while evolving, remain a vital part of what makes Cambodia unique. In this way, rice farming is not just about feeding the population or producing a commodity, it is about sustaining a way of life, nurturing the land, and preserving a cultural heritage that has been passed down for generations. The spiritual connection between the people and the land, as exemplified by the Khmer Empire, continues to guide Cambodian rice farming practices today. By continuing to honor these traditions, Cambodia can build a sustainable agricultural future that reflects both modern realities and cultural values. Imagine a Cambodia in the future where the wisdom of the past is seamlessly integrated with the innovations of the present. Rice fields, lush and thriving, stretch across the countryside, nourished by advanced irrigation systems and climate-resilient practices. Farmers, young and old, work together in the fields, using modern tools and technologies to ensure a bountiful harvest. The harvest festivals, vibrant and full of life, continue to celebrate not only the work of the season, but also the spiritual bond between the people and their land. Rice, as both a crop and a symbol, continues to bind the Cambodian people together, providing sustenance, pride, and identity. The future of Cambodia's rice farming will require adaptability, resilience, and a commitment to sustainability. By focusing on innovation, education, and community-driven solutions, Cambodia can ensure that rice farming remains a central part of its economy and culture for generations to come. At the same time, it can serve as a global example of how to adapt traditional farming practices to meet the demands of a changing world. Rice, in the end, is a timeless symbol of Cambodia's strength and perseverance. From the rise of the Khmer Empire to the present day, rice has been at the heart of the nation's story. And as Cambodia looks to the future, rice will continue to be not just a crop, but a living connection to the past, a symbol of the enduring resilience of the Cambodian people and the land that has sustained them for centuries. Cambodia's rice farmers are the keepers of a legacy, and with the right support, they will continue to shape the future of the nation. The challenges may be great, but the lessons of the past, combined with the innovations of the future, will ensure that rice remains the foundation of Cambodia's agricultural prosperity. It is a legacy that will continue to feed the nation, nourish its people, and sustain its culture for generations to come. As we conclude our exploration of Cambodia's rice farming legacy and its future, it's essential to take a moment to reflect on the cyclical nature of rice cultivation, both literally and metaphorically. From the rise of the Khmer Empire, with its mastery over the land and irrigation, to the modern-day efforts to preserve both the environment and culture, rice farming in Cambodia encapsulates a story of endurance, adaptation, and deep-rooted traditions. As the world faces growing environmental and economic pressures, Cambodia's rice farming story offers not only lessons, but also a hopeful vision for the future of agriculture. The power of rice in Cambodia lies in its multifaceted role. It is a symbol of life, community, and cultural pride, while also being an economic pillar. For centuries, rice has sustained the people of Cambodia, feeding families and communities, nourishing the economy, and even shaping national identity. In times of prosperity, rice farming provided abundance and wealth. In times of hardship, rice became a symbol of resilience, a constant force that tied the people to their land and their ancestors. It is this unique bond between the land, the people, and rice that has allowed the tradition to endure through centuries of change and challenges. As Cambodia looks ahead, it must continue to navigate the challenges of a rapidly changing world. The pressures of climate change, the need to modernize agricultural practices, and the shifting patterns of global trade will all play a role in shaping the future of rice farming. However, Cambodia has an advantage: its historical connection to rice, its deep respect for the land, and the legacy of the Khmer Empire's agricultural ingenuity. These traditions provide a solid foundation upon which to build a sustainable, prosperous future for rice farming in Cambodia. Imagine a Cambodia where modern and traditional practices coexist harmoniously. In this future, rice fields stretch out across the country, but the methods used to cultivate them have evolved to meet the challenges of the modern era. Water-efficient irrigation systems, climate-resilient rice varieties, and organic farming techniques are now common practice. Farmers, using new technology and tools, continue to honor the traditions that have been passed down for generations, ensuring that rice farming remains an essential part of Cambodian life and culture. In this future, the spiritual connection to the land remains strong. The harvest, still celebrated as a communal event, continues to bring people together, just as it did in the time of the Khmer Empire. The rituals and ceremonies, though adapted to contemporary life, still honor the deep connection between the Cambodian people and the rice they harvest. Rice, in this context, becomes more than just a crop. It is a symbol of the continuity of Cambodian identity, a reflection of the resilience of the land, and a promise of a sustainable future. The journey of Cambodia's rice farming, from its roots in the Khmer Empire to its modern-day evolution, is a story of both adaptation and preservation. Cambodia is at a pivotal moment in its agricultural history, one where the legacy of the past can inform and inspire the future. By embracing sustainable practices, supporting smallholder farmers, and promoting community-driven solutions. Cambodia can ensure that rice farming remains central to the nation's economy and cultural life for generations to come. Rice farming in Cambodia is a living testament to the strength and resilience of the Cambodian people. It has sustained the nation through times of prosperity and hardship, offering both physical sustenance and a sense of cultural continuity. As the world faces unprecedented environmental and economic challenges, Cambodia's rice farming legacy offers hope and inspiration. By combining the wisdom of the past with the innovations of the future, Cambodia can lead the way in creating a sustainable, prosperous future for rice farming and the generations that depend on it. And as we conclude this exploration, it's clear that the story of rice farming in Cambodia is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning. The lessons learned from the Khmer Empire, the challenges faced in the modern era, and the innovations of today will guide Cambodia's rice farmers as they continue to grow the crops that sustain the nation. Rice will continue to be a symbol of life, culture, and identity, nourishing the land, the people, and the future of Cambodia. Now, as we step away from the history and look forward to the future, let us remember that rice is more than just a crop. It is a living connection to the land and the people. It is a symbol of resilience, of community, and of continuity. The future of Cambodia's rice farming is bright, and with a continued commitment to sustainability, innovation, and cultural preservation, rice will remain at the heart of the nation for generations to come. Good night.